Chapter 160. The Monkey King's Palace 4. There were traces that you never would have seen if you didn't look closely. They were things that faded away with time, but Yin Wu had his extrasensory perception, so he could see them. They were deep marks, and in them, there was a firm vestige. This was different from the depressing vestige that was attacking Yin Wu and his people. It had a strong and energetic vibe to it. However, it was split into different pieces, so people couldn't find it. You have discovered a very old sword mark. You have discovered a spear mark made a moment later. You have discovered a dirtied footstep. ... What's all this? Yin Wu was surprised as he discovered another vestige of the Monkey King. The Monkey King wasn't a twin, how could he have these opposing vestiges? And what did they mean? Yin Wu was curious, but Hanryong and Shannon, who were looking through Yin Wu's eyes, had different reactions. Wow, this, really, wow, opening square bracket ... I can't believe it, really, how surprising, how were they able to have these thoughts? As their reactions were delivered to Yin Wu asked them inwardly. Do you think you know what it is? Shannon sounded like he was jumping up and down. You're at a master level and you still don't know. You just have a sword and your eyes are a beginner's. Look closely. It was a complaint that wasn't a complaint. Yin Wu was a bit annoyed, but there wasn't anything wrong with what Shannon said, so he focused with his extrasensory perception again. He could see the vestige in the different markings. There were some that were hard to see, and some that were so long that it was hard to see where they ended. Yin Wu wondered just what this was and continued to observe it, and something popped up in his head. You have received intense inspiration. Extrasensory perception is being connected to draconic eyes to locate the markings. The flaws are being read. Single quote ... exclamation mark single quote. Extrasensory perception and draconic eyes, which had been two different things, became connected for the first time. As Yin Wu saw flaws through his consciousness for the first time, he was greatly shocked, but quickly got used to it. Everything felt new. Thankfully, he could see what the markings in the cave were from. Mugong. No, is it training? After organizing the markings in chronological order, he could see a pattern. The markings that were messy at first became more neat as time went on. The training process was on the wall in order. A record of how a master had mastered his skills even more. Like it was witness to the Monkey King's change. The monkey had been furious at being sealed. He went mad, and he spent about 100 years in his crazed state. Then, he realized something. Who would it harm if he was crazy? Himself. So he needed to become stronger somehow to release this seal. From there, the Monkey King worked hard to have the ability to break the fifth mountain. He started to organize his knowledge, and put an effort to become stronger. It was a difficult process, since none of his knowledge was simple. However, one thing that was allowed to the Monkey King was time, so he didn't rush and started to organize it. And everything he realized something, he tested it out on the wall. The foolhardy monkey started to learn patience. He was someone who was able to bend to his goals. And about 500 years later, he was able to finish it. The power to break his seal. Yin Wu was blank for a moment, like he had spent all that time with the Monkey King. If he wasn't used to faster thinking with his time difference, he might have gone crazy. Yeah, this is evidence of training. And he heard Shannon's voice in his consciousness. Yin Wu asked after pulling himself together. Then, is this the 72 arts? What, 72 arts? Shannon scoffed and screamed at Yin Wu in disbelief. You crazy bastard, this isn't even comparable to that. What? Shannon continued screaming in frustration. The 72 arts is only a part of what the Monkey King learned. It's a small part of what he gathered to make this new piece. Single quote ... exclamation mark single quote. Then, Yin Wu realized what he was looking at. He was in front of the Monkey King's everything. He remembered what other nickname the Monkey King had. Sun Wukong Tien, change the spelling. The power that made the Monkey King into Sun Wukong was literally right in front of him. If there were only the movements left, he wouldn't have realized what it was. But these were traces of what Sun Wukong had contemplated, and it was easy to follow with his eyes. Really? Does this make sense? It's more surprising the more you look at it. I feel like I'll know how the Monkey King fought the gods and demons. How could there have been a being like this? Shannon and Hanryong didn't know what to say. It was to peer at the power out of respect for their martial arts senior. Even now, they continued following the Monkey King to learn something. With the combination of the extrasensory perception and draconic eyes, they continued to stare at the traces. However, Yi and Wu couldn't become as absorbed into it as they were. He could only see a limited part of it because he had just reached master level. He knew that it was amazing. Just from what he saw, the level was extremely high, and he exclaimed in astonishment after seeing some sections as well. There was a lot he could learn from. But like how a kindergartner couldn't understand rocket science, Yi and Wu couldn't follow. I guess it's better than Yin sword. It was better than the Yin sword because he could probably learn from it if he studied the basics a bit. So Yi and Wu didn't try to understand the Monkey King's inheritance. Instead, he tried to memorize it, so he could learn it at a later time. But there were some sections that he automatically understood with his dragon's knowledge, so he was able to grow again. This isn't martial art, magic, or alchemy. Is this the arts? No, it's using magic, but it can't be limited to that term. It exceeds. His head felt like it was clearing up. It was like he was looking at a new horizon. Yi and Wu stood there blankly for a moment. And something came to his mind. Perhaps the Yin sword as well. It's another fork in the road. Rebecca spoke in an annoyed voice, looking at the 3 forks ahead of them. Hours had passed by already since they entered the dungeon. And in that time, they had been met with several forks. Unless you were stupid, you would know that the dungeon was twisted like a maze. They couldn't find the way, since they didn't know where was where. Maybe if they could spread their consciousness, it would be better, but the Monkey King's vestige ran at them if they did that, so they couldn't do anything. And no one had said anything, but they all felt like they were going in circles. It's not that I'm feeling it, but we really are. We're lost. Unlike the others, who were limited in widening the range of their consciousness, Yi and Wu had already gotten a general idea of the infrastructure of the cave. He narrowed his eyes. Should I take the lead? He had hesitated to step up. He didn't know what Kindred and the Devil Army was planning, so he had to control his actions, and since he was memorizing the inheritance of the Monkey King as well, he didn't have time to focus on other things. But if this went on, the story changed. Even if he wanted to uncover what the Devil Army was scheming, he wouldn't be able to do anything if their party wandered around the cave like they were trapped in a maze. And from some time ago, the formation of the maze has been slowly changing. That was the reason why they were going in circles. And I don't know what that guy in the back will do. Tien. Yes, Yi and Wu said guy. Yi and Wu slightly shifted his consciousness to the back. Behind the party, who hadn't noticed anything, there were a bunch of bats blending in with the dark. Saw Luna. She had said she wanted to live so she wouldn't participate, but she was secretly following them using her skill with bats. Tien. Yes, Yi and Wu referred to her as a guy. Rebecca and Victoria hadn't noticed her. They were focused in front of them, so they didn't have time to look back. Saw Luna was using that aspect. She was probably planning on taking the 72 arts for herself. And if she moved like this, she wouldn't be in danger from the Monkey King's vestige either. Yi and Wu left her alone because she wasn't dangerous, but he was planning to do something soon. Eventually, Yi and Wu made up his mind. And the moment when Yi and Wu tried to say something. Kyak, KRR, the monster portents started screaming along his black bracelet. And they were flicked back into his bracelet by something strong. It meant that they had clashed with something strong and lost. What is that? Yi and Wu felt shivers down his back. He stopped walking. And at that moment, what were you trying to saw? Rebecca looked at Yi and Wu with an annoyed voice as usual, but Yi and Wu grabbed her wrist and pulled her in. Rebecca lost her balance and stumbled. She was about to shout at Yi and Wu to ask him what he was doing. But she felt something soar up from where she was and her back felt cold. A sturdy and sharp shadow thorn. Boom! Yi and Wu swung his Karshina's dagger that was emitting aura. Aura exploded and the thorn exploded with it. This is. The Monkey King's vestige seems to have officially begun to get us. Yi and Wu clenched his teeth. Now they were using physical means. As they became closer to the origin, their attacking methods were varying. Rebecca's eyes shook. This attack, even she hadn't read it. An apostle of the god of hunting. Her signature skill hadn't activated. She had continued feeling this way since entering the cave. She felt like she was tied up in chains, and she was tired. But a player from the lower floor had read it. Since he was the ones who saved her from the attack. Rebecca grit her teeth at the fact that she was less useful than such a player. Of course, she knew that Yi and Wu was different from other players. She didn't hear the specifics, but she heard that players who climbed the tower were shocked at what he could do, and from what she saw in half a year, he was the player who grew the most. But she had the reputation of a high ranker. She couldn't understand why she didn't feel what Yi and Wu felt. Her pride was hurt. But Rebecca didn't let pride get in her way. She organized her thoughts and used open speaking. Kane, yes. From now on, you take the lead. TN. Also, mistakes reported in the server are deleted once they are fixed, or if they're not mistakes, smiley face. The ones that are left are the ones that I haven't decided what to do yet. Answering Geralt of Rivia's question, cause it was a good point. Chapter 161.1. The Monkey King's Palace 5. Khan and Victoria whipped their heads towards her as if asking what she was asking. But Rebecca was firm. Right now, Khan is better than me. So you take over. Understood. Yi and Wu read Rebecca's consciousness and nodded his head. It was better for him since she said it first. She's cynical, but an okay person. His judgment of Rebecca changed. It was rare for high rankers to admit their limits. People who did were able to become stronger. It was necessary to save these kinds of people. From then, Yi and Wu and Rebecca switched places and he started to officially lead them. Yi and Wu wasn't hesitant. Every time there was a fork in the road, he headed straight without any pause. Hey, you, Victoria was about to say something to Yi and Wu. Don't trust him. The header's decision is obsolete when clearing a dungeon. Rebecca defended Yi and Wu. Khan didn't say anything. Rebecca looked at Yi and Wu with intense consciousness. All of her senses were focused on him. Her judgment was to trust that guy. And Rebecca's obsolete trust in Yi and Wu didn't fail her. Boom, boo boom. Every time the Monkey King's vestige popped up, he saw it with his consciousness and used aura to break it. Like Yi and Wu had known about this dungeon before, he smoothly led them through the cave. And the path seemed about right. It was an incomparable speed to Rebecca's. Since they'll be surprised if we move this fast too. They'll do something unplanned. Because he wanted to see how the Devil Army would react, so he tried to make them do something. Hoping they would take the bait. Then Yi and Wu and his party arrived at the end of the maze. I think this is it. Yeah, the signal's coming from past here. It's big. Very. When they arrived at the end of the maze, they were standing in front of an iron door about 30 meters tall. There were different drawings on the door. They were mysterious letters and images. It was hard to tell what they meant since a lot of time had passed. But Yi and Wu was different. Since he knew exactly what they were. The last inheritance of the Monkey King. He used his dragon's knowledge to memorize it instantly. You have succeeded in learning the complete form of the Monkey King's inheritance. Additional karma is being rewarded. You have earned 3,000 karma. You have earned an additional 2,000 karma. Yi and Wu called it the Heaven King, and saved it carefully in his brain. Meanwhile, the other members of the party were focusing their consciousness on the letters on the door. They were letters that no one understood. Victoria, is this? Rebecca asked Victoria to interpret it, and Victoria slowly translated the rune letters. Heaven order godly precious iron. Magic stick seal door. Yeah, this is the magic stick. I didn't think it actually. Rebecca exclaimed in wonder. The magic stick was the weapon that symbolized the Monkey King. It was endlessly long, and the holy power inside it was outstanding. They were surprised to see the god's tool that they had only heard about. They were surprised that this iron door itself was the magic stick. When Khan touched the door, his eyelashes fluttered. Very lightly, his mouth dried up. But I think this is only a part of it. Where are the other sections? Victoria was trapped in a scholar's passion for a moment. Rebecca coldly cut off her thoughts. Do that stupid research later. Right now, let's retrieve Kindred's body. How do you think we open this door? I've been looking for a way since earlier. Victoria tried various methods, but the runes scattered apart every time. Her smooth forehead crinkled. Godly precious iron of the gods. This was a legendary iron that was able to seal gods and demons. That was how resistant it was, and even Victoria's rune magic failed. And they couldn't try to force it open. Khan used all his strength, but it didn't even budge. He wondered how Kindred had managed to get past this door. Yi and Wu moved past them and stood in front of the door. His consciousness had already looked over the iron door several times. He tried looking for flaws with his draconic eyes, but he couldn't find any. Complete flawless. Was there really a thing like that in the world? And there was something on his mind. Godly precious iron. He subconsciously rubbed his black bracelet with his left hand. When he had shown Adora this bracelet, she said that it might be godly precious iron after looking at it with her insight. TN. Sorry, I forgot what IT led this metal to before, but this metal is described in this chap, so I'm changing the term. Back then, he had only considered the idea. But looking at it now, he felt strange. Then, like it had read Yi and Wu's thought, it lightly trembled. Yi and Wu put his hand on the door, doubting himself. And that moment, the door that seemed like it wouldn't budge creaked open. The other members looked at Yi and Wu dumbfoundedly, but Yi and Wu just simply shrugged his shoulders. And he threw his consciousness inside. Like its name, palace, it really was fancy. And as if they were servants greeting their king, on 99 stairs, there were extravagant statues ordered below the top stair. Each of them were intricately decorated with the face of a monkey. And along the side, there were large stone column-like figures standing as if they were on guard. The Monkey King was known to be the king of the yokai monkeys. This seemed to have imitated how he ruled over his domain. They were only statues, but the party uncertainty paused, as if they could feel the aura of the real things. They couldn't gather the courage to actually enter it. And the powers of each of the statues were enough to surpass Khan and Yi and Wu. They didn't fall short when compared to Rebecca either. More than anything, the vestige of the Monkey King suddenly disappeared. They couldn't see the depressing vestige that tried to swallow them. They felt danger. There, kindred, but when Victoria had tried to follow the traces of magic to kindred, Rebecca and Khan's movements became different. Kindred's body was on the center right. And in front of him, there was a large stone monument of about 30 meters. The small letters engraved on the front of it stopped the two in their tracks. 72 arts. The power of the Monkey King was here. Found it. Then, Khan took a big step forward with a trembling voice. Unlike Rebecca, who was being wary of the Monkey King's vestige, Khan's attention was only on the stone monument. If only I have that Doyle can. The moment Khan moved forward like he was possessed. Ha ha ha, I'll take the 72 arts. Sol Luna suddenly popped out from the air. Before Rebecca and Victoria could do anything, she laughed loudly and flew towards the stone monument past the iron door. Then, who dares to wake the king's eternal sleep? With the sound of a resonant open speaking, a black wind suddenly blew and ripped Sol Luna to pieces. She couldn't even fight back. Khan stopped in his tracks after seeing that, but the air inside the hall was already drastically different. Creak, the hundreds of statues turned their heads as one. All gazes were focused that way. Vestiges emanated from the statues. A powerful power blew around the hall like a storm. The dungeon shook up and down. A sudden quest has begun. Sudden quest King's Terracotta Soldiers. Summary. The Monkey King has succeeded in leaving the Fifth Mountain after 500 years, and after his penance, he was able to take off his shredding and become a god. But the yokai monsters that met the god on Mount Wagwo became resentful at having to wait for their king again. So until the day their king returned, they built an underground palace where his shedding was left behind. And to prevent the thievery of his shedding, they set up terracotta soldiers to protect it using their vestige. From now, escape with the shedding of the king safely. Also, prove that you have the qualification to become the successor of the Monkey King. Participation qualification. Attainment of hidden quest, Monkey King's Palace. Reward, qualification of 72 arts. The first test is commencing. A message popped up in front of them. Shit, Khan realized his mistake. He had been blind for the 72 arts in this dungeon that could have traps anywhere. Sol Luna was the one to awake the stone monuments, but he wouldn't have caused this if not for her. Khan quickly pulled back. Fortunately, the fist of the stone monument missed him. As the fist crushed into the ground, pieces of stone flew out. But that was only the beginning. The stone monuments, not including the guard statues, all ran towards the entrance. Those who dare to bother the king's eternal sleep must pay with their death. 100 voices all shouted as one. It beat into their eardrums. Boo-boom. The monkeys, despite being made of stone, moved quickly. Their weight left imprints on the ground where they stepped. Chapter 161.2, The Monkey King's Palace 5. The monkeys, despite being made of stone, moved quickly. Their weight left imprints on the ground where they stepped. That was how heavy and fast they were. Being hit with a fist could easily crush one's head. Rebecca and Victoria instinctively moved. You can't let them go outside of that door. Victoria. Got it. Rebecca gripped the artifacts that were made by Cernunos's horned sword. She jumped forward with one each in her hand. On the outside, it looked similar to any other sword, but it had the power to split spaces. A storm arose as she swung them about at the monkey statue. Boom! The monkey statue's abdomen broke off to the side. But behind him, 3 more came and fell over Rebecca. Then, Victoria brought her hand down with runes. Fire exploded and blew the monkey statues away. The statue at the very front crumbled apart, but the other two were just damaged and landed lightly back. Rebecca and Victoria moved towards them again. Boo boo boom. Rebecca twirled her swords at the front. As she created winds with every twirl, holding off the statues, Victoria used rune magic behind her to protect her. The two were planning on preventing the statues from going through the door. Because then, they would be completely surrounded. Victoria wouldn't even have time to use her magic. She needed to stop them from getting behind them. Khan, reading their thoughts, took a deep breath and turned his direction. He gripped his sword on his right hand and suddenly cut his land palm on the blade. Blood smeared onto the blade. The sword became a deep red. Cry, and with Khan's command, the sword started to cry. Less than seduction of blood greater than. It was a skill that ate the blood of their user to strengthen them. It was the skill that gave Khan the name Blood Sword. Khan was able to grow that skill on the fifth mountain, and now it even had an exploding quality. As he powerfully swung his sword, a bloody light waved around him and blocked the approach of the monkey statues. Khan used that opportunity to cut the necks of the statues. There was only one thing he had in mind. To get to where the stone plaque was. His sword reflected his rushed mind. And, Yin Wu swept his hair back with his hand, spinning around his extrasensory perception and his draconic eyes. He split his consciousness into different parts using his time difference and quickly tried to understand the situation. On top of that, he easily shot down the monkeys one by one with his aura. Fortunately, the guarding statues didn't seem to have moved. He needed to get rid of as many as he could before the most powerful ones started moving. But even these were too dangerous. He even thought about activating his dragon's authority. These monkey statues, they're all moving with vestige. The Monkey King's vestige. I was mistaken. What we were dealing with all this time wasn't the Monkey King's vestige but his servants. Since the Monkey King had been sealed here for so long, he thought it was obviously the Monkey King's vestige. But there were only traces of the Monkey King's vestige. What was putting them in danger now was the vestige of the servants. They should have focused on the name of the dungeon at the beginning. The Monkey King's Palace. A palace, not a ceiling point. Then it would have clearly been the vestige of the servants. He shouldn't have thought that the weak vestige was from the Monkey King in the first place. To think that he hadn't been able to think about this simple fact. However, the moment he knew the identity of the vestige, the difficulty decreased. All he had to do was group his attacks to fight them off. Yin Wu grew his consciousness. As his extrasensory perception and draconic eyes became more clear, he could read the flaws of the monkey statues around him. And there was a place where the flaws were especially more gathered. The nucleus. It was where the yokai monkeys had planted their seeds of consciousness. Yin Wu identified it with his time difference and exploded his magic power in that direction. Aura poured down like rain. Because his proficiency wasn't that high yet, he wasn't able to damage it that much. But that was enough. Attack where I just marked, plays. That's where the vestige is gathered. The eyes of the other three sparkled at what Yin Wu said. They were starting to become tired. But the story changed if someone pointed out the weakness. Rebecca tightly held her horned sword and turned around. Less than arrow rain greater than. As her signature skill activated, the two horned swords exploded with fancy effects. Every time she swung her swords, the effects endlessly attacked the nucleus, breaking it into pieces. Victoria used double casting to deliver two types of magic at the same time. It was targeting, and God's hammer, to hit the target right on the spot with precision. It was only two types of magic, but it used up to 2/3 of the runes of her bracelet. Boom! The mark turned purple, and tens of nuclei rained from the ceiling. The monkey statues weren't weak enough to be defeated by this attack. Rebecca and Victoria didn't spare anything and put everything into continuously attacking them. Yin Wu and Khan flashed around the momentarily stunned monkey statues and cleaned up the remaining nucleus. And after they spent a considerable amount of time, the last monkey finally fell. You have successfully passed through the first test. Please get ready for the second test in the remaining time. 0 hours 5 minutes and 0 seconds. 0 hours 4 minutes and 59 seconds _99. 0 hours 4 minutes and 59 seconds _98. ... Pant. This is crazy. Victoria plopped on the ground with a pale face. Because she had used all her rune magic, her magic power was completely gone now. If she had pushed herself a bit more, her magic organ would have been damaged. Thankfully, she was able to avoid that. But her desire for a solution to her problem just increased. And her heart became heavier at the message about the second test. Because if this kept up, they would be in big trouble. Health was important too, but she needed to figure out how to replenish her magic power first. Rebecca and Khan looked tired as well. Especially Rebecca, who grit her teeth at not being able to use the power of an apostle. The dungeon that reflected the fifth mountain exactly was disadvantageous for her. Because all her senses except for her consciousness were flicked off, she couldn't fight properly. Without even being able to use half of her skills, she used all her health. She felt like she was going to cry. Khan felt the same. Yi and Wu was comparatively better than them because he had saved his health a little bit. But he was still tired. His head was filled with complicated thoughts. Kindred and the Monkey King. Palace. 72 arts. Khan's attack. The second test. There were too many things he had to think about even though there were only 5 minutes left. There was nothing else he could do except catch his breath. He. Amazing fellows. Yi and Wu and the others whipped their heads at the sudden voice. In the middle of all the crumbled stone pieces, black fog slowly floated up and turned into Sol Luna's head. She laughed like she was amused. All of their faces hardened. Rebecca's face became distorted. What? You were alive? Do you know why an undead is an undead? Because they don't die easily. Then, work hard. Sol Luna quickly dissipated into the fog in case she got caught. Rebecca cried out in fury. If only she had some strength left, she would have been able to easily rip her apart. But she probably also received a lot of damage, so it'll take some time to regain her body. She won't be able to do anything, so let's just forget about it for right now. Thankfully, she was able to calm down a bit with Victoria comforting her. Rebecca swore to herself that she would chase after Sol Luna the moment she left the dungeon. But unlike the others, Yi and Wu was already doing something about Sol Luna. Shannon. Okay, leave it to me. I don't really like Weasley guys like that either. I want to make her suffer a bit. Shannon separated from the black bracelet and melted into the shadows. The monkey statues were all broken, but the danger wasn't gone. Yi and Wu was planning on controlling even the last variable. And he thought, why wasn't the devil army appearing when things had gotten to this? Was it because they didn't get what they wanted yet? Or, are they waiting outside for us to take care of everything? Yi and Wu thought it might be the latter. Even though he had spread his extrasensory perception all around the cave, he couldn't find a trace of the devil army. Other than them, no one else was in the dungeon. That meant one thing. The devil army didn't plan on interfering with the dungeon. Instead of suffering some losses, they would just wait until everything was taken care of and take the hint of the magic stick and the 72 arts offer. Then that means it's dangerous outside and inside the cave. Yi and Wu thought the trap of the cave didn't end there. Because then, he wouldn't have been this suspicious of the devil army. There's something else. Something. While Yi and Wu was lost in thought, Victoria and Khan stood up after somewhat regaining their health. Victoria to where Kindred's body was. Khan to the plaque. Yi and Wu's gaze subconsciously followed them. But Yi and Wu knew the body was fake. I should fold my thoughts about the devil army right now. Focusing on the second test is enough. Second test. What could it be? Victoria was examining Kindred's body. His head was half crushed, but it wasn't hard to identify it. The moment she examined the body, her face hardened. She realized that it was a doll that looked similar to him. Danger signals flashed in her head. Meanwhile, Khan was in front of the stone plaque. He looked over the plaque with a tired face. On a black background, there were shiny blue letters. 72 arts. He tried to memorize everything. Reading Khan's consciousness, Yi and Wu continued to think. The quest said to take the shedding of the king. Shedding. What is the shedding? How are we able to prove we're qualified with that? Shedding. The same word repeated in Yi and Wu's head. Even while his eyes were focused on Victoria and Khan, his time difference was whirling around, trying to solve the hint that the quest had given them. If shedding is a metaphor, then things that the Monkey King had before he became a god. His eyes widened. 72 arts. Yeah, the 72 arts would have just been shedding to the Monkey King after he made a new masterpiece. The puzzle started to match in his head. And what the Devil King wanted. The blue letters of the plaque that Khan was touching seemed to be shining even more. To prove our qualification, we have to learn the 72 arts. And the Devil Army is trying to brainwash whoever mastered it onto their side. When he came to that revelation, he turned back to Victoria and Khan. How should they prove their qualification? If the first test was about examining their basic skills, the second test was probably about quickly understanding the stone plaque and using it. And the test overseers were right in front of him. The guarding statues. If they were the overseers. Then he thought of something else. What was the reason the fake body was in that position? There would definitely be a reason if the sinister devil army had put it there. He quickly came to an answer. Pinpoint. 0 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds underscore 02. 0 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds underscore 01. 0 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds underscore 00. The preparation time is finished. The second test is beginning. Then, the large statues that hadn't moved an inch while on the walls rolled down. His gaze landed on someone. The person who had been confused over the weird body. Victoria. A large statue pointed its spear at Victoria. Victoria. When they realized the strange phenomenon, Khan, Yi and Wu, and Rebecca all tossed their bodies to Victoria. Chapter 162. The Monkey King's Palace 6. I'm too late. Yi and Wu instinctively knew that he was a step late. He was already quite far from where Kindred's body was. He used his shunpo, but the stone statue was much faster. Boom! With a large explosion, a dust cloud floated up. Yi and Wu flipped the wind around with his Karshina's dagger. Through his blurred consciousness, he could see something bloody being blown away. It wasn't Victoria, it was Rebecca. Rebecca, who had been relatively closer, pushed Victoria out of the way and was hit with the spear instead. But it seemed like she hadn't properly blocked the attack, because the spear had pierced her body and one of her swords was broken. Because it had been so sudden, she probably didn't have enough time to activate her swords, and she had used too much energy in the first test, so she wasn't able to easily stop the attack. And more than anything else, because they were on the 20th floor where their senses were blocked, she couldn't use all her skills. Rebecca! Victoria shouted at Rebecca, who was sacrificed instead of her. Meanwhile, Khan grit his teeth and quickly rescued her from the statue's range of attack. Yi and Wu belatedly arrived and spun his magic circuit around. He stored Karshina's dagger away and pulled out the magic bayonet instead. An aura blade swished out and clanged into the statue's spear. Kwang! Hup! Yi and Wu took in a big breath subconsciously. It was an incredible attack. His mind instantly wavers and his arms felt like they were going to be pulled out. He was pushed back. It's strong. He knew that the large statues wouldn't be comparable to the monkey statues, but he felt more in danger now that he was actually face to face with one. He felt the statue bringing its sword down again. It was fast and heavy. If he faced it head-on, he would die. He thought just now, he was only able to block the attack because of luck. Time difference. His thinking abilities sped up. In the slower world, Yi and Wu quickly read his surroundings. Victoria had safely been rescued by Khan. Rebecca was breathing, but it was still very faint. She was in danger. And aside from the statue he was dealing with, the other 11th statues were probably going to start moving too. If the 12 statues all moved at the same time, no one here would survive. Then what was he supposed to do? I have to think. Anything. The only way to pass the second test was to learn the 72 arts. But the arts weren't a cheap skill that could be learned in 5 minutes. So there was probably a reason why the amount of time given was so short. Or there was another way to stall for time. And something came to his mind. There was something more important than proving that you were qualified to be the Monkey King's successor, and that was respect. Or fear of the king. Then his faster thinking stopped, right before the spear hit Yi and Wu's head. Everyone down, Yi and Wu shouted with his open speaking. And he bowed on the floor. This was a gamble. If he succeeded, he could somehow earn some more time, or he would die. But he would definitely die if he didn't throw the die, so he had to try. And Yi and Wu felt Khan and Victoria putting their heads on the floor like he said. In a very short moment, Yi and Wu experienced a rough nervousness flowing over his back. And when nothing happened, he was sure that his gamble had been successful. The large statue that had been attacking Yi and Wu, and the other statues all stopped. Like time had frozen. Is it done? Khan slightly lifted his head to see what was happening. When the statues began to move again, he had to bow down again. With this, he was sure. Is it something like paying respects to where the king is? Fucking. Khan ground his teeth together. And he felt relief at the fact that he could momentarily catch his breath. Rebecca. And Victoria called out Rebecca's name several times. Rebecca's voice became more faint. She wanted to use her healing magic somehow, but she didn't have any magic power left. Then Rebecca completely stopped breathing. Victoria sobbed. Yi and Wu and Khan felt desolate. Khan bit his lower lip. Even Yi and Wu, who didn't really know Rebecca that well, felt grim. The party once again clenched their teeth at the pressure forcing their bodies down. A heavy silence descended on them. Kane, did you figure something out? It was Khan who broke the silence. A bit. Can you share? Yi and Wu didn't reply for a moment. Actually, he wanted to ask Khan some things. He seemed to know something about the 72 arts. And it was probably related to Doyle somehow. So he wanted to ask, but Khan didn't seem like he would answer. He even seemed like he would die if they told him to die. And so he didn't ask anything. Since if he had something to pick at, it could be done later. Right now, survival was first. No, he changed his mind. Since it's already like this, I'm going to take the Monkey King's inheritance. He had no way of knowing if this was the last test. There could be a third and a fourth, and he didn't like that they would have to struggle to survive every time. And he knew what Kindred and the Devil Army wanted. He felt like his anger would only be settled if he stole the Monkey King's inheritance from right under their eyes. And all things aside, since it's not only the 72 arts. It was known that the Monkey King had several treasures while he traveled to and from heaven. He thought he might be able to get those treasures as well. And the magic stick was something that Yi and Wu especially wanted. He didn't just want to use it. If there was a holy artifact made of godly precious iron, he might be able to understand the black bracelet a bit more. So Yi and Wu wondered whether he would be able to hoard the quest to himself during the silence. He came to one result. That there couldn't be anyone to bother him. Then he didn't want to leave any witnesses. To tell the harsh truth, he didn't think that the powerless Khan and the runeless Victoria would be of any help to him. First, he had to let them escape. Thankfully, with his extrasensory perception and draconic eyes, he was able to find a small door next to the iron door. The door they had passed through was a door that only a king was supposed to pass through. The door next to it was for servants. Yi and Wu gathered his thoughts and slowly opened his open speaking. I think the purpose of this dungeon is to determine the successor to the Monkey King. Successor. At Khan's question, Yi and Wu answered with the things that he had figured out. The successor of the king. The shedding, and how to qualify. That definitely makes sense. Khan heavily nodded his head. He thought Yi and Wu's guess might be right. And the slightly settled down Victoria nodded her head in agreement. Actually, it was something that the two would have been able to guess themselves, but they hadn't been able to be cool-headed with the continued attacks. But Yi and Wu had calmly understood the quest. His mind felt amazing. And in my opinion, it's hard to prove our qualification. At what he continued to say, Khan and Victoria nodded their heads again. Because they thought that learning the 72 arts was almost impossible. Even though they were bent towards the ground, they were able to read the information on the plaque with their consciousness. Khan and Victoria completely memorized the plaque soon enough. But that was it. The area of arts was too foreign to them. They needed a lot of time and research to learn it. This place was probably for another group of people in the first place. Other people. I think that this isn't the only place related to the Monkey King. There's probably other places. Ah, Victoria understood what Yi and Wu said. Khan kept his silence. Important quests were usually a series. So that meant this quest related to the Monkey King had begun elsewhere, and this was the last place of the series. In other words, they were supposed to have the basics of the arts down already, but they were thrown into the last step of the series without any of it. And if that was true, there was one other thing that was true. Victoria bit her lower lip. Then, Kindred, I think it was a trap from the beginning. Since he couldn't figure out how to solve it, he probably wanted to use us as an experiment. To see if there was another way. Fuck, that damned geezer, Victoria shouted in anger. She felt it when she first saw Kindred's fake body, but she was even more angry now that she realized she was used by him. Since Rebecca had basically been killed by him. And she also thought of something else. Her magic wouldn't have failed her, but how had he cut her magic off? But she decided to think of that later. Was there anything she could do right now? First, let's escape from here. Whether we kill Kindred or keep him alive, we have to live first. What? There's a way. Khan and Victoria had shocked voices. Next to the front door, there's a small door. I think it's possible to leave through there. They shot their consciousness to where Yi and Wu pointed out, and they were able to find the small door. But Khan was still frowning. There's 12 statues. It's too hard to avoid all of them. That's okay. We have bait. What? I'll stall for time somehow. You and Victoria run towards the door when I send the signal. Khan shut his mouth. He couldn't tell what Yi and Wu was thinking. But in the tutorial, Yi and Wu had always found a way to solve the problem in an unexpected way. And it was the same this time as well. He wondered if he should have told Yi and Wu about the thing with Doyle earlier. But it wasn't too late now. Before he could speak, Yi and Wu was sending the signal. Run on the count of 3. 1, 2, Khan pushed those thoughts away. He needed to escape this palace first. He had already memorized the information on the plaque. It wasn't too late to ask Yi and Wu for help after they got out of the dungeon. 3. Khan and Victoria started to run towards the door. The two gathered what magic power they didn't have and moved as fast as possible. Victoria used her blink. The eyes of the 12 statues all turned towards them. Then, Yi and Wu moved. Shannon, he, I was waiting. Yi and Wu reached out for something in his shadow. Something caught his hand. He didn't even check what it was and threw it up in the air. Arg, let me go. You, let me go. Sol Luna flew up in the air. She was a blurry form of a human after being caught by Shannon. The gazes of the large statues turned towards Sol Luna. She realized that she had made a mistake, but countless spears were heading towards her already. This time, she couldn't be as lucky as the last. The spears of the large statues were more precise and sharp. As holes appeared in her body faded away. I want to live, and before she breathed her last breath, Shannon appeared from the shadows to take her soul, and he hid back into the shadows again. Then, Yi and Wu began to move. Magic equip. The runes firmly engraved in his bones all activated. His strengthened magic power circulated in the 360 cores of the magic circuit. With the additional 2 types of magic on top of the 4 he already had, 6 types of magic strengthened his body. And at the same time, he thrust his magic bayonet forward. The spears that had changed their targets from Sol Luna to him and flew at him. The magic bayonet and the spears powerfully clashed. This time, his body wasn't blown back. He was only pushed back a few meters. His magic bayonet that was pushing against the spears was trembling. It's working. Yi and Wu's eyes sparkled at the fact that his magic equip he had only used in theory was working. His arm would have broken under normal circumstances, but he had been able to block the attack. He couldn't help that his body was trembling. But it was okay as long as it worked. Yi and Wu began to push the spears back with his magic bayonet. Magic bayonet against spears. Neither of them surrendered. Then Yi and Wu suddenly disappeared with blink. Boom! The spear landed where Yi and Wu had been and Yi and Wu appeared right behind it. Blink allowed him to instantly move short distances. It used that much more magic power, but since Yi and Wu had the Needin of the 4 legendary beasts, he wasn't concerned. In the middle of the air, Yi and Wu's wings of fire spread apart. His magic bayonet that was condensed with holy fire landed on the statue's neck. The statue's neck exploded with a boom. It stumbled, but it regained its balance and attacked again. Meanwhile, he could feel that Khan and Victoria had left through the door. Finally, thinking he didn't have to hide his power anymore, he used blink to rapidly escape from the statue's range. He reappeared in front of the door. Khan and Victoria motioned for him to come over. Go ahead first. Yi and Wu said those words and closed the door. Click. He heard the sound of the door locking. Thankfully, he could hear Khan and Victoria asking why he did that, but Yi and Wu ignored them and turned back to where the large statues were. The 12 statues were running at him. The ground shook. Looking at them, Yi and Wu opened his mouth. Territory announcement. Dragon's blood circulated in his body. The Blessed One of the Dragon woke up. Chapter 163. The Monkey King's Palace 7. Kane. Khan and Victoria roughly knocked on the door. But the door didn't budge. The same went for the metal front door. It didn't move at all. They tried to use their skills and magic to break the door down, it didn't work. Only messages popped up. You have moved out of the chosen area. You cannot enter because you are not qualified for the quest. Shit. Boom. Khan slammed his fist against the door. He knew it wouldn't work, but he felt like he would go crazy if he didn't do anything. He was always like this. With his mother, Doyle, and even now. He trained hard thinking that he shouldn't be a burden anymore. And he even had the 72 BN that they required in his possession. But, from where had it gone wrong? Why did he always have to be this pathetic? All kinds of thoughts went through his head. He even thought of the most extreme of things. If he at the very least died here, he wouldn't have to deal with everything. But Khan shook his. He couldn't let himself be emotionally shaken up like that. He had to stand back up. First, he had to believe Yi and Wu. Because he always solved things. Then there was only one thing left. Their safety. Victoria. Khan cleared his thoughts and turned back to Victoria. She already looked exhausted. Rebecca, Kindred, and even Yi and Wu. Everything that had happened today was taking a toll on her. Khan knew her well. She acted seductive and materialistic. Although he teased her about her age, she was never actually mad. Kindred is probably outside. Victoria's empty stare suddenly became fixed. She understood what Khan was saying. A trap. Then that meant Kindred was waiting for them outside. And he might not be alone. That was dangerous. Of course, she had the magicians of the Magic Tower behind her, but they wouldn't be of much help here. But they were short on time. Then, his eyes instantly changed. I have an idea. Do you wanna hear it? Dragon's authority, Vina, has been announced. You are able to use your authority in the selected territory. The first step authority is being set. Authority, Dragonic blood. Within the set time, all stats increase. Within the set time, all physical defenses increase. Within the set time, all property defenses increase. Dragon's energy has been awakened. Under his feet, blue magic circles spread around him. And Yi and Wu's territory was created. The constraints of the fifth mountain were washed away like sand on a shore. Although he was still on the stage of the fifth mountain, the area that Yi and Wu was in was the territory of a dragon. Here, he was able to pull out everything he had. As the constraints disappeared and his five senses came back, his extrasensory perception became more detailed as well. It was a new world that Yi and Wu never experienced before. Euphoria. It could be described like that. He could be sure that his training for the last half year hadn't been for nothing. He was incomparably stronger than before. It was worth it to limit his own magic power to train. There was nothing he couldn't feel in his territory. He could see all the different wavelengths and the stream of mana, and he could interfere in what they were doing. Consciousness opened the pathway for it. While he was on a high, blue scales grew on his upper body up to his neck. His scales bumped against each other. He felt a strange emotion as his two dragon eyes opened. 3 sets of wings made of holy fires soared high enough to reach the ceiling. As if showing off his stronger power, Yi and Wu didn't hide any of it. And he pulled Vigrid out from Intrenian. Vigrid was definitely different than before. It was as long as a spear, and the rune letters on the blade shined brightly. Vigrid had returned to the holy white sword, taking in the holy power. Vigrid. Type. Single hand longsword. Rank. Sword purification. Vigrid always lived a life of fighting. So within it, there was the blood, sweat, and tears of those it fought. The deep vestige of the heroes always shows itself in battle. The more it fights against, the more it absorbs murderous intent and buffs the user. The stronger the enemy, the more powerful the fighting force. Blessing wavelength. When attacked by your opponent for the last time, it curses all the enemies near you. After they are infected, their defenses decrease and their movements slow down. Life of fighting. When the hatred of your opponent has increased more than normal, the vestige of the heroes can be used. Attacking speed increases by 30% at most, and attacking power can increase up to 1,500%. Instead, defenses and properties decrease by up to 50%. Not opened yet. Sealed. This artifact is unique. There isn't an artifact like this in the entire tower, and it is completely bound to its owner. It cannot be given to someone else. You have released 90% of the curse. You must have a new attribute or qualification to clear the rest. Vigrid was completely different than when Yi and Wu first had him. As it regained its function, the hidden options revealed themselves one by one. Each of them was something that Yi and Wu needed. Less than sword purification, greater than. Yi and Wu looked at the 12 statues. His power increased as much as they had murderous intent. His draconic eyes reddened and he was able to find flaws in the statues. Caching. And Aegis floated up above him as well. There were 7 in total. With his dragon's knowledge's growth, the number of his shields increased as well. On top of that, Aegis also had another effect. Less than goddess's spears were greater than. The owner of Aegis, Athena, was the goddess of war. With her blessing, Yi and Wu's fighting abilities increased. And as if they didn't want to be beat, figures rose from his shadow like they were protecting him. Shannon and Hanryong appeared with swords, and Bu flew in the air, shouting curses. A black hole was opened and his summons arrived. The aura of a dragon and the energy of death combined in the air, filling the hall. This was the greatest show of power for Yi and Wu. It was on a different level than what he showed when his senses were blocked. Like the stone statues had read Yi and Wu's new appearance, they paused. They slowly rolled their eyes to observe Yi and Wu. as if they were searching for something. With the opening of the vestige, a loud voice boomed in the air. Prove your qualification, the qualification of the successor. They emanated an abundant amount of vestige and ran towards where Yi and Wu was. That was the beginning. You're dealing with these kinds of stupid things. Dang, there's never a boring moment with you. But didn't it work out well? We can test it out. I guess. The monster portent army spread out. Shannon and Hanryong each dealt with one statue. They seemed excited. What they had seen of the Monkey King, what Yi and Wu had classified as heaven things. They wanted to try it out, and they had the perfect chance to do so. They didn't expect to completely understand it. But just by looking at it, it would be a big help to them. Shannon especially seemed to have learned about something. If he could learn this, he might even be at an expert level. So Shannon and Hanryong moved around like a fish in water. While they were here, they would be able to use their full strength. Boom, the hall became a mess after some time. It was filled with undeads, dragon energy, and monster portents. The statue of the king shook like it would fall any moment. Don't bother the king's sleep. Knowing that the cause of all this was Yi and Wu, 3 of the large statues attacked Yi and Wu at once. He used Blink again to escape. At the same time, the place he had just been in was hit with spears. But like they wouldn't let him go, they continued to follow him with their eyes. Swoosh! You could hear the sound of the wind as they moved. No matter how much he set his territory and escaped, it was dangerous to come face to face with them. After all, they had killed the high-ranker Rebecca easily. Of course, Rebecca didn't have her full powers, but they were still strong enough. So Yi and Wu avoided their attacks using his wings of fire and Blink. It wasn't hard for him to predict their movements with draconic eyes, time difference, and extrasensory perception. Instead, Yi and Wu attacked from their blind spots. When they turned their heads to the right, there was an attack from the left, and if they lifted their spear up, he knocked their legs over. Fire violently burned. It turned the ground into a crisp and broke the walls. Yi and Wu was fast and focused. Even while he was escaping their attacks, he didn't stray too far from the statues. He chose the method of repeatedly attacking the statues little by little until they fell. And when he occasionally exploded his fire rain, the skin of the statues were burned sometimes. But the statues were running on vestige, so they wouldn't become tired. No, Yi and Wu was at a disadvantage if this kept on. Right now, he was fighting however he could, but he wouldn't last long. However, Yi and Wu knew this. No, he knew better than they did. Since he had continued to think about the quest to finish it. Now that he had read their movements, it was time to start what he had thought about. They continued to tell him to prove the qualification of the king's successor. There was nothing about getting rid of the stone statues. That meant that he had to learn the 72 Bian here and prove it to them. He wasn't sure, but after he learned the Bian, he would probably be able to push them back. How were you supposed to learn something while fighting? It was impossible for normal players, but Yi and Wu had a skill called time difference. Faster thinking and calculation. With these two, anything was possible. And more than anything, he had the inheritance of the Monkey King. The inheritance was more outstanding than the 72 Bian. He had only understood a bit of it, but with it, the 72 Bian didn't seem too difficult. Also, each of the movements of the status were examples that he could see. He saw each statue had 6 different types of main movements. There were 12 statues in total. Each movement was the 72 Bian. Yi and Wu had already read their patterns with his extrasensory perception, so if he didn't understand anything, he could just go over the inheritance of the Monkey King again. It was a very complex process. He felt like his brain would explode. But when everything was open, the first of the 72 Bian opened. July. He powerfully brought Vigrid down. As the area split, fire rain poured into it. It was the natural connection of a skill with another skill. The trajectory of Vigrid had cut the arm of a large statue off. TN. 72 arts had been changed to 72 Bian. Chapter 164. The Monkey King's Palace 8. You have successfully solved the first art, July. You have successfully understood the shedding of the Monkey King, 72 Bian. You have successfully achieved an accomplishment not easily achieved. Additional karma is being rewarded. You have earned 5,000 karma. You have earned an additional 3,000 karma. The skill, 72 Bian, has been created. 72 Bian. Rank. Proficiency, 1.2%. Summary. The skill the Monkey King Sun Wukong learned from his teacher. Sun Wukong was able to become the king of the yokai with this skill. Each Bian has its own characteristic, so it's very tricky to learn it all. If you learn them all, you can become a good people or great yokai. Wind cloud. Clouds and wind are properties of the world. To be able to deal with these, you have to have a high understanding of the structure of power. Combination. It connects laws and the user and provides a natural effect of the skills. Bian you have learned so far. July. The skill of pulling out power instantly. It requires attention and focus, and if failed, it puts the user in a confused condition. At least a master level power is required. The chance of succession increases as the sword skills of the user increase. It worked. Yi and Wu's eyes widened. He had tried to use several methods, but the 72 Bian weren't easy. It was the skill that made Sun Wukong into the Monkey King after all. There was no way something like that would be easily attained. But Yi and Wu had grasped the flow of the large statues somewhat, and he had successfully solved the first art. From what Yi and Wu saw, the Bian was a lot different than what he thought. He thought they were similar to magic or spells, but it was in a completely different dimension. The Bian dealt with laws. No, to be more exact, it dealt with space. It was something that dealt with the laws of a specific space. A power that deals with space. That was what the first Bian Yi and Wu learned is the will to cut. Magic power determined the space based on his will to finish something off. And what he had now was the result of all his skills and powers combined. He was tired, but more than that, he felt joy. The happiness that he achieved something. Starting something was halfway to finishing it. It wouldn't take that long to understand the rest of it. And after that, he could probably memorize the inheritance of the Monkey King after. Phew, Yi and Wu breathed out. At the same time, his dragonic blood circulated, giving him more strength. His dried magic circuit was slowly filling up with magic power. This was the best part about Dragon's authority. Because in that short amount of time, he could regain his condition. It didn't completely chase the tiredness away, but this was enough. If he spent some more time, he would definitely be able to find a way to defeat the large statues. So he was about to move again. You dared to bother the king's eternal sleep, but you proved your qualification. Our work is done. The large statues spoke as one. Then, they stopped moving, and their bodies all started to crumble. Before they could reach the ground, they scattered into dust. There was only sand left where the 12 statues were. Yi and Wu was taken aback by the sudden development, but he understood what they were saying. The second test was to prove his qualification. Since he had shown that he was able to do one of the 72 Bian, that was enough. They had judged he was qualified and disappeared. You have successfully passed the second test. Please prepare for the third test in the remaining time. 0 hours 1 minute and 0 seconds. 0 hours 0 minutes and 59 seconds _ 99. 0 hours 0 minutes and 59 seconds _ 98. Just a minute. It was ridiculously short. He frowned. He didn't even have time to think if it went on like this. That moment, the hall started to vibrate again. This time, it was the throne at the top of the stairs. It split in half, along with the wall behind it. With a boom, an area revealed itself, although it was too dark that he couldn't tell what was in it. 0 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds _ 01. 0 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds _ 00. The third test is starting. He didn't know what might happen. He swallowed in nervousness. As his territory disappeared, he could feel the heavy constraints of the fifth mountain again. However, his extrasensory perception was shining brighter than ever. Widening his extrasensory perception, he tried to look inside, but he didn't see anything. He felt like he was being absorbed into darkness. It was similar to when he first entered the dungeon, but also a bit different. It was creepy back then, but now, there was nothing. It was like the lights were turned off. There was nothing he could do except to face it head on. And when he entered, Yi and Wu was surprised at the new scene he saw. This was a completely different world than before. A large field, waving grass and flowers, and a calm breeze. A fruity scent, and a vast forest and mountain behind it. If the paradise people talked about existed, this was probably it. Just what were they testing here? Yi and Wu couldn't hide his surprise. Until now, he had passed through obstacles that always threatened his life. He couldn't guess for the life of him what kind of test would take place here. And just when he was lost in thought thinking about where to go, he lifted his head at the sudden energy from the sky. Beyond the clouds, A great dragon was gliding through the air smoothly down to him. His blue scales and red eyes stood out. He seemed different from the dragon species in the tower. His body was long, and he had horns like a deer. In one hand, he had the bead commonly called the Sintamani stone. It was a being exuding holiness and dignity. He seemed to be a higher class than the legendary beasts that Yi and Wu saw. He might even be equivalent to Erd. His eyes shook. He had felt overwhelmed with Erd, but that dragon was worse. Was he like a dragon god? But to be a god, you had to have a domain. Was that possible on the 20th floor? If it was it a god related to the Monkey King? He had all kinds of thoughts. He thought maybe the legendary beasts in his philosopher's stone might help, but they didn't wake up. He wasn't able to come to a decision as the dragon slowly descended and stood in front of Yi and Wu. He realized it when he saw from far away, but the being was colossal. It was hard to tell where he ended and began. The dragon looked at Yi and Wu with his red eyes and asked, "Are you the new piece?" Peace. Yi and Wu narrowed his eyes at the unfamiliar word. "No, I guess the word successor is better here. Anyway, are you the new successor?" Yi and Wu nodded his head. "Yes." "Then get on my back." Where was he going to go? Yi and Wu thought he was taking them to the testing location and lightly got on the dragon's head. Then the dragon turned his head and shook his body. In an instant, Yi and Wu was passing through the clouds. "I'll release you from your constraints first." The Sintamani stone that the dragon was holding shined. Then, Yi and Wu was able to regain his senses. And he widened his eyes at the light breeze against his face. It felt fresh. That was the first thought in his head. Although they were definitely moving through the air at a rapid speed, it didn't feel cold or harsh. Rather, he felt like they were blowing his concerns away. On top of that, the scenery was amazing. Yi and Wu didn't feel touched at most things, but he couldn't help but exclaim in astonishment. "Hoo-hoo." The dragon god laughed like Yi and Wu's reaction was funny. And while Yi and Wu's attention was on the view below him, the dragon god had arrived at a mountain. The mountain was covered in different types of fruit trees. It was an intensely sweet scent, and it wasn't the type of scent that made your head hurt. He felt refreshed smelling it. And at the top, there was a man sitting on a rock with a smile. Hair that came all the way down his ankles, golden eyes that shined like jewels, and a humorous face. His presence seemed weak compared to the dragon god, but looking closely, you could know that wasn't the case. Because all the rules in this world rotated around this man. And his consciousness was light but powerful. Most of all, it was familiar to Yi and Wu. The traces of training that he saw in the dungeon were similar to that man. The Monkey King. He had started from an animal, and become powerful enough to be a god sitting next to the god of the heavens. That man was waving his hand at him. "Ooh, you must have been tired with the wait." The dragon god didn't respond and just placed Yi and Wu down like he was annoyed. Looking at the dragon god flying up into the sky, the Monkey King grinned. It was fun teasing him when he was younger. But is it because he's a teenager now? He doesn't even reply. Hee hee. Yi and Wu didn't know how to feel looking at the laughing Monkey King. He had jumped in the Monkey King's palace thinking that he should hoard everything, but he didn't know he would meet the king himself. "Why, is your heart thumping and your head dizzy because you met a celebrity?" "What? Hee hee, you don't have to deny it. I understand. I shouldn't be this awesome. All the people who came here seem to do that. Difficulty breathing and heart attacks. Phew, I had to suffer through all that. But you're better than those kids, actually. I like it." Quote. Yi and Wu had a thought while looking at the Monkey King absorbed in complimenting himself. That he was a lot different than what he imagined. Chapter 165, The Monkey King's Palace 9. Why are you looking at me with such admiring eyes? Endless narcissism. His self-love was too strong. And he talked a lot. Yi and Wu wondered for a moment whether the person he was looking at really was the Monkey King. He seems worse than Sezong Nim. Seeing him talk a lot, it reminded him of Khan. It was the type of person that Yi and Wu hated speaking with. Fortunately, Yi and Wu figured out a way to take care of it. It was to ignore what he said about himself and switch the subject. "I have something I want to ask." Wait, but before he could finish speaking, the Monkey King blocked Yi and Wu's mouth with his hand. "I'll tell you about the terms and conditions before you ask." I can only answer 3 questions. I'd like to tell you everything, but I can't because of the principle of causality. Principle of causality? Where you're in right now isn't a normal place. You have to choose your questions carefully. Yi and Wu was lost in thought. Actually, it would have been easier if he was planning on meeting the Monkey King. However, he stumbled here by accident after training with the sadhu. And he didn't know what Kindred and the Devil Army were planning either. The questions were limited. Eventually, Yin Wu opened his mouth after careful consideration. A piece, what is that? The dragon god had called him a piece after seeing him. He knew it was something to describe the successor, but he thought there would be a specific reason for that. The Monkey King grinned. It seems like our dragon made a mistake. No comment. I can't say anything. It's sensitive information. Yin Wu shut his mouth. If no comment was his answer, he just blew one of his chances. So he changed the direction of his question. What's the reason you made this place? He thought it wouldn't be to make his successor. The Monkey King was clearly aiming for something. No comment again. Yin Wu frowned. What was he supposed to do if he answered 2 out of the 3 questions he had like that? But the Monkey King was still smiling. Like he was saying, what are you gonna do if I don't tell you? He definitely seemed like the martial king the more he saw him. So Yin Wu was forced to think again. It seemed like the Monkey King couldn't speak about something after a certain line. Because of the thing with the principle of causality. Then he had to change the intent of the question. But he also thought that this might have something to do with the 3rd test since the Monkey King hadn't said anything about it yet. Thinking that way, he could see the line. He had to ask a general question. One that was detailed but didn't cross the line. His gaze sunk. Who are you? It was a completely unexpected question. The Monkey King's eyes widened, and he started laughing and slapping his knees too. Ha ha ha, I wasn't able to think of that. Shouldn't you ask what the bian is or how to learn them quickly? But a question like this. Very good. And the Monkey King suddenly stopped laughing. As he did, the warm breeze stopped. That moment, Yin Wu felt that the aura of the Monkey King was incomparable to the dragon god. Even Erd from the temple on the 16th floor was nothing compared to this. He felt like he was in front of a high mountain. And he became sure. He had suspected it when he asked, but this world was a part of the Monkey King. The Monkey King spoke in a low voice. Pass. You have successfully passed the 3rd test. You have successfully passed all tests. You have cleared the sudden quest and the hidden quest. You have earned the skill, 72 Bian, and the title, Monkey King's Descendant. You have achieved an accomplishment not easily achieved. Additional karma is being rewarded. You have earned 10,000 karma. You have earned an additional 15,000 karma. Title, Monkey King's Descendant. Before the Monkey King left after unsealing him, he decided to leave his inheritance of the 5th mountain. He hated it because it was where he was locked in, but he had grown somewhat fond of it after 500 years. Also, he followed his teacher's last words to leave the bian to his descendant. With this title, you will have outstanding focus and attention during a fight. And you are able to manifest the Monkey King's power. Please request the Ruyi Bang's clue from the Monkey King's shedding yourself. TN. Magic stick changed to Ruyi Bang. Yin Wu widened his eyes at the messages. It was about how he could manifest the Monkey King's power. He couldn't even imagine what this meant. Meanwhile, the Monkey King, no, the person who seemed like the Monkey King, spoke in a low voice. Yin Wu thought that he should test this out later and listen to what he was saying. I am the Monkey King, Sun Wukong's vestige. I am only the shell he left behind before he disappeared somewhere. Well, like a shedding. The shedding of the Monkey King didn't just mean the 72 Bian, but this being in front of him. And he was also shocked. The power of a mere shedding was like this. He even made Erd seem small, so how powerful would his actual body be? And this world is like an imaginary world that such a vestige made. And you're in it right now. Yin Wu nodded, thinking he was right. It even said so in the title. That the Monkey King had left his 72 Bian in the mountain. Then he understood why the servants had built the palace after he had left. It wasn't just where the Monkey King stayed, but also where his inheritance was left behind. So you don't know where he really is? The Monkey King's vestige shrugged his shoulders. How would I know? He's more free-spirited than me, who's left here. The reason why I'm here is to test how his descendant would be. I'm sick of being here too. He spoke like he was genuinely annoyed at being here. Although this was an imaginary world, he could do anything he wanted. He was frustrated he couldn't leave. But it's a relief that a qualified person came after some time. It was worth it waiting. Yin Wu's eyes shined. After some time, why is a quick guy like you asking questions like that? People say that you're sneaky, right? Whatever, take this. The Monkey King's vestige tossed something to Yi and Wu. It was a piece of gold metal that was about the size of his hand. Yi and Wu accepted it without much thought, but his eyes widened when he saw what it was. The material was familiar. It was godly precious metal. Piece of Ruyi Bang. Summary. Rank. Summary. One of the pieces that make up the Ruyi Bang, the Monkey King's holy artifact. Currently, it doesn't have any function, so it seems like it'll have to be combined with the other scattered pieces. The Ruyi Bang had pieces. Yi and Wu thought that this might be a hint about the Ruyi Bang. Ding, there is a related quest. Would you like to continue it? Yi and Wu looked at the piece of the Ruyi Bang and then back at the Monkey King. He didn't say anything and just pointed at the piece with his chin. This piece might have been just the beginning. A hidden quest has been created. Hidden quest Ruyi Bang's owner. Summary. Although the Monkey King kept his teacher's last words, he became worried about the fact that his reputation would be messed by the growing number of descendants. So he divided the Ruyi Bang into 100 pieces and hid them all over the tower. From now on, gather the pieces and finish the Ruyi Bang. Only then can you succeed him. Qualification condition. Title, Monkey King's successor. A player who has at least one of the piece of Ruyi Bang. Time limit. None. Rewards. 1. Title, Heaven King. 2. Completed Ruyi Bang. 3 eyes plus. The title of Heaven King and the Ruyi Bang. With these, the successor could truly be the new Monkey King. And to earn this title, it was clear there were other players who were working hard to find the piece. Since the name of the Monkey King itself was amazing. And Yi and Wu realized that he had been included in that race as well. My actual body. He's someone that won't easily give anything away. He's twisted, so he's only satisfied when he sees that others suffer. And the Monkey King's vestige laughed. The pieces of the Ruyi Bang are scattered everywhere. The piece you took was the last. I don't know how there are remaining in the tower. Some might be in the hands of people who don't know what it is. Quote. It might cause a large fight. There's a lot of people who want the reputation of the Monkey King, no, of the Heaven King. Hee. The Heaven King wasn't just a title. It was a position. Then do Kindred and the Devil Army have some pieces? And if they did, how many? And when had they started to collect it? He now somewhat realized what the Devil Army was aiming for. It was to have the Heaven King in their hands. It was completely possible for them to try. Is there a way to find it? He waved his hand. My job is only to give the test and lead them if they seem useful. Clues and all that is up to you. Since that's what my actual body wants. You had to have martial skills, the ability to guess from clues, and wise judgment. Well, if you don't want it, you can give the piece back. Since all I have to do is wait until a new successor comes up. That moment, Yi and Wu's eyes shined sharply. But aren't you planning on killing me right away if I give up? Ooh, you're pretty smart. He lifted a corner of his mouth. With it, a violent gaze swirled in his eyes and disappeared. Someone who can't even do this much doesn't deserve to have the Monkey King's name. So what do you want to do? Yi and Wu looked down at the piece of the Ruyi Bang. He had all kinds of thoughts, but the answer was already chosen. Even if the vestige didn't force him, Yi and Wu was planning on doing the quest anyway. This was the reason why he decided to hoard the inheritance in the dungeon anyway. That was the biggest mission. No, even with that aside, Yi and Wu didn't want to share things related to the monkey with anyone else. He wanted to hoard it, competing with others and taking things from them. He knew the happiness that came from that. He learned it from the Martial King and realized it when he was fighting with the Summer Queen. Unless his brother came back, he didn't want to share it with anyone else, even Fantanadora. Of course, he knew that it wouldn't be easy. People who had become successors before Yi and Wu would have more knowledge than him and some might have help from the large clans. However, what did that matter? He could just beat them. From the day Yi and Wu stepped into the tower, his path was riddled with thorns. What would it matter if there was one more? If he could only get the power of the Monkey King, he would do anything. That was how he was able to move forward. Also, Yi and Wu thought that he would be at an advantage. Heaven things. The others would only have the 72 arts. However, Yi and Wu had an inheritance. That meant he was closer to the spot for the owner of the Ruyi Bang than anyone else. I have the yin sword as well. He tightened his grip of the Ruyi Bang in his fist. And he tossed it into Intrinian. I'll do it. I don't necessarily have any thoughts to avoid it. Yi and Wu stood up. You're pretty bold for a newbie, huh? The Monkey King thought that although Yi and Wu's personality was different than his actual self, they were made of the same things. The guy in front of him was a beast. You have accepted the hidden quest, Ruyi Bang's owner. Chapter 166, The Monkey King's Palace 10. Thanks. Yi Yanwu nodded his head at the Monkey King's vestige. He hadn't really helped him, but it was true that he got this opportunity. And Yi Yanwu was able to learn something after seeing the vestige. That he still had a long way to go. He also became sure that he would be able to reach that point if he continued to train. I know you don't really think that. The Monkey King smirked and waved. The space shifted and a red portal opened. Then that's enough talking. If you leave through here, you can go back to where you came from. Yi Yanwu was about to step inside the portal, but he turned his head back after he remembered something. Also, didn't you hear me? The questions you. Wasn't it only questions about the quest that were limited? It wasn't a question about the quest. The Monkey King tilted his head, as if asking what he had to ask him. Yi Yanwu moved back from the portal and extended his right arm to him. Do you know about this bracelet? Bracelet. The Monkey King's vestige examined Yi Yanwu's bracelet thinking that he would flick him hard if the bracelet wasn't worth anything. No, he didn't know if the word bracelet was appropriate. Perhaps, handcuffs, would be better. The black chains that reached up to Yi Yanwu's arms stood out. They were as black as the night sky. The Monkey King looked at the bracelet with an interested expression, but his face hardened after examining it closely. I think it's made of the same material as the Ruyi Bang. Am I right? Where did you get this? Yi Yanwu thought about whether he should tell him the truth, but he was the person who asked the question. So he skipped the important parts and said Astrape had taken on this form when he was in the Olympus treasury. And the vestige's face turned strange. Its function. I think it has to do with souls. It deals with the dead. Yes. And how powerful is it? Yi Yanwu lightly waved his hand and summoned the monster portents. The shadows stretched out and monstrous creatures stepped out. The vestige's eyes were completely narrowed, deep in thought. It was a bit awkward seeing him this serious because he had been so calm. But Yi Yanwu hoped for the secret of the bracelet to be revealed. Because only then would he be able to unlock the remaining options. Even soul magicians can't do this. You have to be at least the level of. There were countless types of players in the tower, but of them, it was hard to find someone who skillfully handled souls. That was how clear the line between life and death was, and even if they could handle them, there were limits. But the vestige understood as soon as he saw the Black King's despair. This was an artifact that surpassed logic. And since it was an artifact that swallowed Astrape, he had heard about the spear from rumors. This bracelet might give the Ruyi Bang a run for its money. But what pulled his interest the most was what it was made of. Godly precious metal. To think that the rare metal to make the Ruyi Bang would be used here. And it was completely made of the metal. First, it's godly precious metal like you said. Yi Yanwu nodded his head. However, I don't know what it is no matter how many times I looked at it. There's some things that remind me of it, but it looked completely different. And its level is high. This is definitely a weapon of a god. Definitely. Yi Yanwu was disappointed at the fact that he hadn't been able to discover what it was this time tier, but his eyes sparkled at the last part. A weapon of a god. He had guessed it was something similar to that when it swallowed Astrape, but now he was sure. This might be something that could be compared to Aegis. No, it might be more powerful than Aegis. Then who was the Black King? You said there were 2 more artifacts like this. Yes, I don't know who made it, but I'm sure. Neck and feet. There's additional artifacts, and they're probably similarly shaped to this. The Monkey King's vestige crossed his arms. Do you wanna know something funny? What is it? It's known that godly precious metal is so rare that even gods and demons can't use it, right? Yes, but did you know it's the opposite? What do you? It's not an artifact that they can't get enough of, but they're actually afraid of it. Yi Yanwu's eyes widened at the unexpected sentence. The Monkey King snickered like Yi Yanwu's expression was funny and continued to speak. This metal is the sole tool that can seal gods and demons. Quote. Godly precious metal was used to control gods who did bad deeds. Or to ban them. The Ruyi Bang was used to seal off devil kings too. Yi Yanwu thought of the legend of the Monkey King who had traveled with Tan Sanzang. At the time, the devil kings who had been in their way were easily pushed away. And the journey to the west was what described that. The same goes for your tool. The Monkey King's vestige stroked his chin. It looks like something used to bind a criminal. And it turned into the property of the criminal through its vestige because the criminal was bound in it for a long time. I think it's someone related to death. But that's all I can know. Yi Yanwu nodded his head. This was enough. He became sure that the Black King was a powerful person that even gods were afraid of, and that he was related to death. Then his range of research would become smaller. He felt like he would be able to find who it was if he closed the range just a bit more. Yi Yanwu expressed his gratitude again. The Monkey King waved his hand like it was nothing. I saw something interesting for the first time in a while. I didn't know there was someone like my actual body. Ah, and if you meet my actual body, don't show that. His greed for treasure is extraordinary. I'll be careful, and he disappeared into the red portal. With that, the imaginary world closed. Hee, interesting guy. The Monkey King's vestige's eyes sparkled. Actually, from when Yi Yanwu had entered, he had been peeking into his different appearances. Someone who awoke the energy of a dragon. He reminds me of someone. Doesn't he? The vestige raised his head to the sky. The dragon god looked down at him and nodded his head. Since his old owner had fought like him once as well, he felt a strange déjà vu. He didn't express it, but the dragon god had actually given Yi Yanwu a lot of benefits. From releasing him from his tiredness with the Sintamani stone and letting him relax in the breeze. The vestige looked at the guy reminiscing about the past and turned around, bitterly smiling. And something came to his mind. He had said he didn't know what the bracelet was, but he actually did. He just didn't recognize it right away. That material and form was only used on one person, so it was easy to tell whose it was. That Hermes bastard, I guess he'll be busy. And while he was muttering mysterious words to himself, the Monkey King's vestige felt something sharp and twisted his head. The space was trying to be opened. Yi Yanwu thought it might be Yi Yanwu because he left something behind. But realizing that the wavelength was unfamiliar, his face hardened. The dragon god twisted his body and thrust the Sintamani stone forward. His face settled calmly. This was the imaginary world of the Monkey King's vestige. This was like his holy territory. Even though he was only the shedding, he was still pretty strong. So it was impossible for the greatest gods on the 98th floor to force themselves in. So the fact that they were easily entering meant one thing. His actual body was moving, or it was something related to him. Since no one would ask for permission to enter their own home. Chapter 167, Set 1. The air split and the red portal opened. The Monkey King's vestige could feel a familiar energy beyond it. It was a sharp and heavy energy. The form was different, but it was the same as him. And a small boy entered the imaginary world. A mischievous smile, and a small height. Kindred kneeled and bowed his head. Then, Kindred showed a new side of himself. Like he was greeting the god he served, he spoke with polite manners. Another face of the great Heaven King. I've come to serve you. When he went outside, all the benefits he received from the dragon god disappeared and he could feel the constraints of the fifth mountain again. However, the world he saw with extrasensory perception wasn't uncomfortable anymore. Yi Yanwu swept his hair and turned his head. Did they go already? He spread his extrasensory perception across the dungeon. Fortunately, he couldn't feel Khan and Victoria. Seeing as how there weren't any bodies, it seemed like they avoided the devil army. Khan would definitely have known that it was foul play by Kindred since he was pretty clever. Victoria was skilled enough to hide their presences after her magic power was replenished. So he widened the range of his extrasensory perception and searched outside the dungeon to see if Kindred or the devil army was still there. But it told him that only they were there. He couldn't find any other traces. Then where had they gone? Yi Yanwu narrowed his eyes, but shook his head a moment later. It was a good thing they were gone. Even if they were here, it wouldn't be hard to hide from them. It was enough if Khan and Victoria had managed to escape safely. He sighed in relief and headed towards where Rebecca's body was. It was hard to recognize her bloodied figure. Yi Yanwu felt gloomy. Even if he wasn't that close, he was able to see that she was responsible and knew how to take care of herself. He saw from how even though she wasn't in the best condition, she tried to save Victoria who was in danger. The fact that she was Cernunnos's apostle pulled him to her even more. The god of hunting. His name wasn't that well known, but he knew that he was among the greater gods. Is there a way for me to retrieve this person's soul? The black bracelet only allowed him to take the souls of those he killed. She wasn't included in that. And her soul wasn't left here. It had probably already returned to Cernunnos. Yi Yanwu hesitated for a moment, and put her body in Intrenian. There was a method he could try, although she might not like it. If she denied it, he could just return her to her original state. He began walking, and ate all the pieces of the monkey statues with his left hand. Then, he damaged the plaque with the 72 arts on it so no one could see. As he did, he purified all the leftover vestiges. He didn't leave behind the traces on the wall either. I guess there's no need to leave it behind. Yi and Wu was planning on breaking everything before he left. The Monkey King's vestige had said so. That the pieces of the Ruyi Bang were scattered all over the tower, and there were many successors trying to look for it. Then they were enough. He didn't need new rivals. And more than anything, he couldn't let anyone else take heaven things for themselves. Especially the devil army, he was going to have to himself. And that day, the cave in the 5th mountain that had been there for a long time collapsed. Then, Yi and Wu entered the portal to the 21st floor. This is the 21st floor, gate of the Shadow Dojo. With blue waves, a new sight came into his vision. Was it because of the freedom from the limits of the 20th floor? He felt that the outside air was refreshing his lungs and mind. In front of Yi and Wu, there was a large building. The skill archives of the One-Horned tribe was smaller than this. Yi and Wu's eyes widened. He saw the 21st floor's stage in the diary, but it was bigger than he thought. It's been a while coming here. The black bracelet lightly shook, delivering Shannon thoughts to him. I guess it was fun. There was no place like here for me. I see what you mean. Yi and Wu thought of the information of the 21st floor he saw in the diary. If the 20th floor is somewhere to fix yourself, the 21st floor is to check how much you've changed. You move in 33 different sections, and you have to beat the shadows in each section or endure them until the time's over. There isn't a better place than here to check how much you've improved. And if the shadows see that you're someone registered on the Hall of Fame, then it's a good opportunity to see their special characteristics or abilities. The theme of the 21st stage was basically a dojo break. Like its name, this was a dojo for people who were training their martial arts. The dojo was divided into an outer section and an inner section. It was set up so people could train by themselves with the basic soldiers supplied by the tower. Sometimes, there were scarecrow dolls, which allowed for you to train your basic martial arts. From the entrance of the dojo, there were 5 doors numbered 1 to 5. The higher the number, the higher the difficulty, and once you passed a door, you had to clear the 33 sections straight from there. What you had to do in each section was simple. Within the limited time, you had to defeat the shadow given in that section, or endure their attacks. And the shadows were illusions that replicated the 1 to the 165th ranked player on the 21st floor's Hall of Fame. After the tower was created, countless strong players passed through it and left records. Of them, this was the Hall of Fame that only the top skilled players would be able to leave their mark. All players wanted to put their name on it, and only a few were able to have this honor. So normal players felt extremely pressured when entering the stage. Even if they chose the lowest difficulty door, it had the illusions of the players ranked from 165th to 133 road. Among them, there were lords or apostles. If there was a relief, it was that you could still pass if you endured the attacks. And if you were hurt, it was possible to heal yourself and try again. And like what the diary said, you could see the younger selves of the rivals you might meet in the future, and this was a good place to study them. Of course, those whose illusions were left had to train again because they didn't want anyone else seeing their weakness. But if your name was on the Hall of Fame, it was a good thing in many ways. However, what was an honor to most didn't really matter that much to Yi and Wu. Until now, except for the 10th floor, Yi and Wu had placed first in all the floors. And on the 10th floor, he was only a few points away from Adora, who was first, so he had still accomplished a great feat. So people thought that Yi and Wu would clear this floor easily. However, Yi and Wu couldn't simply accept that. A replication of the players. Yi and Wu was deep in thought, and he popped up the message of people who were on the Hall of Fame. 21st floor ranking. 1st, Bivasbat. 2nd, Lo Wei. 3rd, Hugh. Yi and Wu slowly scrolled down with a shaking finger. 4th, Cha Jung Woo. He didn't enter the trial right away. Because he was on the 20th floor for such a long time, he had some errands to do. And someone to go say hi to. As soon as he moved out of the tower through a red portal, he headed straight for the One-Horned tribe's village. Who's this? Isn't this Yi and Wu? Who's harder to see than a flying pig? When Fant heard that Yi and Wu returned, he dropped everything and came running. He greeted Yi and Wu with narrowed eyes. Had he been farming, he had a straw hat on, and there was a rake on his shoulder. His skin that had been pretty dark from being out in the sun a lot was darker than ever. Yi and Wu just looked at such a Fant then turned to ask Yanu. What about Adora? Fant shouted in anger. Aren't you being too unfair to someone who's talking to you? Got it, that's enough. How did it go with the legendary beast? You said that it was time for it to hatch soon. Fant sighed, knowing that Yi and Wu wouldn't take his complaints. He felt that he was being ignored by everyone in the village these days. The legendary beast woke up a long time ago. But he still looked a bit angry at Yi and Wu. Of course, it didn't work on Yi and Wu. Where? Follow me. Yi and Wu followed Fant to the outskirts of the village. Everyone that they passed by said hi to Yi and Wu. He didn't remember some of them, but they all felt familiar, so he said hi back. Then, they arrived at some cottage. But the cottage was already crowded with people. He could see the elders running around with smiles on their faces. They had been like this when Kurung was hatched too. It seemed they were curious about the newborn legendary beast. With Fante's help, he managed to get by all the people and enter. Then, he coincidentally looked someone in the eye. The guy narrowed his eyes at Yi and Wu and frowned at him. Then, he coldly laughed. Ah, I heard the legendary beast was related to you. I thought it looked stupid. And just big. Makes sense now. He clearly expressed his enmity to Yi and Wu and left. After, they were able to smoothly pass by the people. What a strange guy. Hee. Strange. His face completely changed when he saw you. I heard that he suffered a lot because of you, so he probably hates you a lot. Yi and Wu tilted his head. Do I know him? Who is that? Fant stared at Yi and Wu to see if he was joking, and when he saw that he was being serious, he burst out laughing. Ha, I guess you're not laughing. That Jang fellow's gonna be steaming when he finds out. I guess you don't have to remember the face of someone you defeated. Your personality is good in that relaxed way. Jang. Yi and Wu was able to remember who that was after hearing his name. When he first entered the One-Horned tribe, this was the guy that he had beat pretty easily. He was supposed to be in the running for a king along with Fant, but after that, his reputation had taken a dip. He remembered that he was the son of the Baeksan family. After that, he never saw him in the village, so he had almost forgotten about him. Yi and Wu had a pretty good memory of people he met, though. He didn't see the guy he knew in the past in that guy's face. Well, I suppose it's understandable you didn't recognize him. Since I was surprised when I first saw him as well. I don't know if he's taking drugs or something, but he's definitely different. Fant seemed to think that it was strange, but he just shrugged like he wasn't that interested. Yi and Wu looked towards where Jang disappeared and narrowed his eyes. Demonic Energy. Chapter 168. Set 2. Just what had he done over that time to exude that dark energy? Last time, even though he was arrogant, he was a kind energy around him. Yi and Wu wanted to say something about it, but he thought the elders would do something about it themselves, so he stayed quiet. He entered the building with Fant. The elders inside were rushing around more busily than the elders outside. Yuahaha. Earlier our Greenie started to potty train. Potty train. Hey, Greenie's gonna be hungry when Greenie wakes up. Bring food quickly. Records. Where are the records? Greenie's color is changing so we need to write it down, but where are they? What do you mean records? Say it's a baby diary. All the elders were smiling from ear to ear. They were also so loud, it sounded like the middle of a busy road. But the moment Yi and Wu saw the legendary beast, he thought it was understandable. Two griffins were cozily sleeping next to each other. With the head of a falcon and the body of a lion. One was red, and the other was blue, so it was easy to tell them apart. Overall, they exuded a holy atmosphere. Griffins were known as the best among mythical beasts. He could see the different energies he had presented to them. You have successfully cleared the hidden quest test of the Abyss Turtle. You have achieved an accomplishment not easily achieved. You have earned 5,000 karma. You have earned an additional 3,000 karma. You have earned the reward, pieces of the head turtle's shell 30 feet and shedding of the tail snake. As an additional reward, Blessing of the Blue Spirit temporary has been changed to Blessing of the Blue Spirit. Your understanding of spirit magic is still low. Learn spirit magic to evolve, Blessing of the Blue Spirit, into a superior spirit. The last quest that he received from the legendary beasts was now finished. Yi and Wu checked the rewards he received. Pieces of the head turtle's shell. Category: Material. Rank: A++. Amount: 30. Summary: The abyss turtle of the 11th floor was a legendary beast made from a mythical beast and magical beast. These are the pieces of the shell from the mythical beast. It is an extremely durable material. It would be a good material to use for defense tools. This artifact is unique. There is only one in the tower, and it is bound to its owner. It cannot be shared with anyone else. Shedding of the tail snake. Category: Material. Rank: A++. Summary: the shedding that the magical beast grew out of for the last time before it became a legendary beast. It is tough and sturdy, and it has the poison trait that it used to have before it evolved. This cannot be used by itself, so it should be made into a weapon. This artifact is unique. There is only one in the tower, and it is bound to its owner. It cannot be shared with anyone else. These materials would be a big help. I was feeling the need for a defense tool and a weapon these days. It worked out well, semicolon. Actually, the weapons that Yi and Wu had were weapons that rankers wouldn't feel were lacking. But it was true that when they were compared to Vigrid, Aegis, and the Black Bracelet, they fell behind. And the Karshina's dagger he bought in the tutorial had turned dull. It was almost time to throw it away. Yi and Wu was planning on raising the attributes of all his artifacts while he was at it. And since he had the void from the Void Dragon that was left over as well. If he used that, a good weapon would probably be created. I want to meet Bram on the 23rd floor, but I can't neglect climbing the floors. Like he had done on the 20th floor, Yi and Wu was planning on giving everything he had on the 21st floor. The opportunity to meet players on the Hall of Fame wasn't easily given. He wanted to challenge all the players from the 165th to the first place while he was at it. Of them, there would be ancient species that were forgotten, and the original owner of Batory's vampiric sword. Also, he could see the old 9 kings who he was planning on battling, so it was a chance Yi and Wu couldn't miss. Everything else aside, his heart beat faster at the thought of meeting someone he couldn't anymore, although they were only an illusion. Is that friend the one to take the place of Abyss Turtle? He could hear Kurung in his head. For half a year, he had been sleeping inside the Philosopher's Stone. Was he awake now because he felt a familiar energy? Hee, Master, I'm up too. Then, he heard Chirpy's voice. It seemed he was done with preparing himself. The process might have been sped up when he saw the legendary beast. Whatever the reason, Yi and Wu felt received. While he was on the 20th floor training, it was okay because he had Shannon and Hanryong. But he was still worried because they only slept inside the stone. Their thoughts that were being delivered to him seemed pretty satisfied. How are you feeling? Totally good. I wanna fly around. So good. I wanna fly around. I'll let you do that later, so wait a bit. Okay, what about Kurung? I said not to call me that. Have you still not decided on a name for me? I couldn't think of a good name. Kurung groaned like he was really frustrated. Yi and Wu subconsciously laughed. He was a bit similar to Heneva's personality. Also, his brother had also gotten angry like this sometimes. He thought everyone's personalities were similar to his brother. How can you laugh in this situation? Yi and Wu stifled his laughter looking at Kurung. It seemed like he would become really upset if he teased him anymore. And they weren't formally contracted to each other yet. Nemesis. What? Your name? How's that? Kurung was silent for a moment. He seemed to be thinking. Then, he slowly spoke up. It's a god's name. Nemesis was a being of Olympus that dealt with revenge. Compared to the 12 Olympians like Zeus, he wasn't as powerful or as well known. But a god was still a god. Using their name meant that you would borrow their authority, but it could also be something that smeared their name. So players tended to avoid their names, and even change the names if they overlapped. But Yi and Wu didn't seem to care a bit. The gods and demons on the 98th floor are debating about something. A few gods don't like it. Hermes is convincing them. A few demons are looking at you with interested gazes. Messages about the gods and demons popped up again. But Yi and Wu ignored them this time as well. If he was going to feel happy or sad with every message, he'd rather just not speak. Also, there was something Yi and Wu was aiming for. The name of a god has power by itself. That's because it was a blessing that had the authority, character, and the position of the god. So if you use the name of a god, you would receive such a blessing. But most of them ended in curses because they couldn't control the power. Because even though the gods were trapped on the 98th floor, they could still use some of their powers on the lower floors. On the other hand, if you were liked by the god, it could be a great strength to you. This was what Yi and Wu was aiming for. To borrow the name of a god and for the mythical beasts to receive their blessing. Although they might be cursed. I'm a bit different though. Yi and Wu had already shown achievements that the gods and demons were interested in. And he was sure he could continue to show that side of himself in the future. Especially if he did things that didn't cross the lines of the god's reputation, and do justice to the god's name. He had no reason not to do it. Yi and Wu would raise their fame, and they would bless his mythical beasts. It was a deal of a sort. Nemesis, you say? Kurung couldn't easily answer because it was the name of a god. But he thought that Yi and Wu's idea wasn't that bad. No, he liked it. It was a perfect name for what they were trying to do. However, the fact that he might cause the god to become angry continued to make him uncomfortable. If you don't like it, we'll have to go with Kurung. Opening square bracket ... I think you always take things to the extreme. Were you aware? I know. So, your answer, let's go with that. Then, ding, the name of the demonic dragon has been changed from Kurung to Nemesis. According to the new name, the mythical beast will change accordingly. TN. Magical dragon right pointing arrow demonic dragon. Magical and demonic are the same in Korean, but I think demonic is better. Nemesis demonic dragon has acknowledged you as his owner. A new mythical beast that has not ever existed in the tower has been born. You have achieved an accomplishment not easily achieved. You are being given additional karma and rewards. You earned 5,000 karma. You have earned an additional 3,000 karma. You are receiving an additional reward. Health increases by 5. Magic power increases by 7. Warning, you have borrowed a god's name. The god Nemesis has decided to remain neutral for this case. The god Nemesis will have their eyes on you. Be careful not you dirty the god's name. Hermes looks at you with a strange gaze. Whoosh. He couldn't see it himself because Kurung, no, Nemesis, was inside the Philosopher's Stone, but he could feel that his foundation had changed quite a bit. It was heavier and darker. Like he was holding a black darkness. Nemesis howled lightly with a Kurung, like he liked his name. That was how he called him Kurung. Yi and Wu thought about that for a moment but didn't say it. But it was a relief. He had been worrying about what to name him, because he didn't have any creativity naming things. Then he met apostles like Hepburn and Rebecca, and he thought of it. If he was gonna change the name, he should just give the additional effects that came with it. And Nemesis would probably work harder to avoid the anger of the god. In the diary, he was as prideful as he was strong. Chirp, then what about me? Me. Chirpy suddenly appeared and fluttered his wings in front of Yi and Wu. He was a bit bigger than before, but his expectantly shining eyes were still as innocent as ever. How about Nike? Nike, it was the name of the goddess of victory. Chapter 169, Set 3. After the very difficult process of naming was finished, he stepped out from the bustling crowd and moved to an empty area nearby. Once he checked that no one was around using his extrasensory perception, he summoned Nemesis. Nemesis slowly came to appearance along with dark fog. A body like the Akasha snake, but the head of a mythical beast for sure. He was already bigger than Chirpy. Before, he had been about 5 meters long, but now, it was closer to 7. Who would believe that he had been hatched less than a year ago? Well, he still has a long way to go compared to the dragon god. He thought of the dragon god he saw in the Monkey King's palace and met Nemesis's eyes. You seem different seeing you like this, master. Nemesis didn't hesitate saying the word, master, anymore. Because I have to grow as much as you guys grow. Good, I don't know about other things, but I like your mindset. Yi and Wu grinned. Nemesis narrowed his eyes. So, why'd you call me? You should know. You didn't say anything. How you were reborn. How ancient dragon Calidus is still living. But I didn't ask. Yi and Wu thought Nemesis needed to have some time to think, so he waited. But now, he seemed to be somewhat better now. He seemed to have accepted the life demonic dragon Nemesis. I hope you can tell me now. After some silence, Nemesis slowly opened his mouth. The reason why I was reborn. Actually, I don't know if you can call this being reborn. Since I have all my memories. But I died, and am living again. So I guess it is rebirth. It's not too different from the method that the legendary beasts use. Nemesis' 2 eyes sunk deeply. I roamed around nothingness all this time. There, I waited and waited for Jungwoo to come back for me. Nothingness. The dimension that was known to flow between worlds. And they said anything that went inside there disappeared without a trace. But he still had his consciousness after all this time. How did you think of waiting for him? Because Calidus said so. What? It was unexpected. Yi and Wu's eyes slightly widened. Isn't that weird? From what I know, Calidus closed his eyes after giving everything he had to Jung Woo. Also, he even gave me his precious dragon heart. We kept his promise, and we even saw him return to mana. Returning to mana was the expression for when a draconic species met death. Since they were blessed with mana when they were hatched, they returned to mana after death. That meant ancient dragon Calidus had definitely died. But when I was surrounded by Cheonwado people without avenging Jung Woo, I heard Calidus's voice. To wait. Nemesis still remembered what Calidus said that day. Wait, that child will come back soon. Come back. Nemesis just believed those words and waited. He roamed around nothingness by himself for a long time. Sometimes, he was overwhelmed with the want to disappear because endless patience was so painful, but every time, he heard Calidus's voice. And he had entered the world again from the call of the same soul as Jung Woo. When he woke up, he thought he was seeing Jung Woo. But it wasn't, so that's how it was. Yi and Wu was deep in thought for a moment. So what resurrected Nemesis was the ancient dragon Calidus. Yi and Wu heard his voice when his dragon body was being awakened, so he knew for sure that he was still living somewhere. Also, there was something else he grasped. Is Calidus the reason for Jung Woo being back at Earth? The reason why Yi and Wu came to Korea from Africa was because his brother was found. He had his ID card in his wallet, and in his pockets were pictures and the pocket watch. After he entered the tower, he was sometimes curious. Just who sent his brother to Earth? The place he closed his eyes was in the house of the old Arthea clan. It definitely wasn't Earth. So that meant there was someone who retrieved his brother. But he didn't know who that someone was. There wasn't anyone he could point out from the diary, and people like Heneva and Galliard didn't know the location of the clan house. But if it was the ancient dragon Calidus, all his questions were answered. And most of all, Calidus had said he would wait until he came to find him. Yi and Wu asked Nemesis. Where would Calidus be? Probably where his deathbed was. Where is that? Nemesis answered in a low voice. 50th floor. The Dragon Temple. Of course, the Dragon Temple on the 50th floor was the place that split rankers and semi-rankers. It was the stage that was called a wall. But it had another meaning to Yi and Wu. It was where his brother had closed his eyes. That was the only place where the portal to transport to the clan house of Arthea was. So Yi and Wu had to get to the 50th floor no matter what, and he was working hard to do that. But a trace of the ancient dragon Calidus might be there. Definitely, since Jung Woo set up the location of the clan house on the 50th floor longing for Calidus. It was known that the clan house of Arthea was destroyed, when it was actually separated into subspace. So I have to get there, but I'm not in the situation to right now. Even though Yi and Wu had the martial power of a ranker, he was still giving his all on each floor. You could only do a trial once. The amount of rewards you got depended on how good you did. Getting 2 numbering skills on the 20th floor was proof of that. Of course, it was possible to come back and do the stage. Like the Sadhu, but that was just individual training, you didn't get any rewards for it. What Yi and Wu needed was an astronomical amount of karma and the rewards that came with it. And I need to fill the Hall of Fame with my name. Unlike the beginners section until the 10th floor, he was taking his time now. But if Calidus was waiting for him, and his last traces disappeared because he was too slow, it would be disastrous. However, no, you don't have to worry about that. Nemesis shook his big head. Why, whatever you do, he'll be sleeping. It's similar to hibernation, but he can wait until you arrive there. How do you know that? Did you forget? Nemesis lightly snorted and spoke. That I'm the alter ego, as well as the apostle of Calidus. Yi and Wu decided on maintaining the speed he was with subjugating floors. If he made a mistake because he was in a rush, he might do something that couldn't be turned back. Getting stronger, and raising the awakening of the dragon body to the 8th step was the most important. After his questions about Calidus were answered, he went to go see his teacher, the Martial King. Sword energy. Huh, you seem like a person now. He was the same as ever. He could tell how Yi and Wu had changed with just one look. Sword energy. In the terms of the One-Horned tribe, it meant aura blade. The eyes of Fant and Adora, who were behind him, turned shocked. Knowing aura meant that you were at a master level. This was because they were only just learning aura now themselves, although they had trained their martial arts since they were young. Fant sighed again, as if asking, again. And Adora's eyes shined. Also, he rubbed his chin and looked Yi and Wu up and down. Then, he grinned widely. I guess you got something else too, huh? Yi and Wu was really speechless now. Kaya, isn't this basically like a clairvoyant? I only heard about the martial king, but I didn't imagine he was like this. Really? The teacher who made Sword God. Even Shannon and Hanryong let out exclamations of respect. They seemed to be seeing something Yi and Wu couldn't. Does he really have the ability to see all things? Yi and Wu couldn't even dream of hiding things any longer. So he sighed, but he thought that this was actually for the better. He wanted to discuss what he had been through while he was at it already. He felt like he knew the Devil Army's motive for collecting the Ruyi Bang, but there were still a few things he didn't get. Why wasn't the Devil Army there when he left the dungeon? If their target was the piece of the Ruyi Bang, they should have sealed off the exit. But wouldn't the Martial King be able to grasp something? And Kindred had acted like he knew the Martial King. So he tried to ask for some advice. Don't, he grinned. You do your thing, and I'll do mine. Trust is important, but you declared independence. And you only come when you don't know something. He definitely was a clairvoyant. But Yi and Wu nodded, because he could see his teacher was being benevolent. And he also thought this. That the Martial King was definitely similar to the Monkey King. So he pushed his thoughts about the Monkey King away. Since he was going to look for the pieces of the Ruyi Bang, he would meet the Devil Army anyway. He could see the reason then. The Martial King crossed his arms and changed the topic. Anyways, so it's the 21st floor now. Fant and Adora turned to look at Yi and Wu again. They had just finished the trial of the 11th floor, and he was already so far ahead. Then, they remembered what the trial of the 21st floor was. Yes, sir. The Martial King grinned. Then you'll see me soon, huh? Chapter 170, Set 4. Yes, sir. I saw you were second. Yi and Wu thought of the Hall of Fame he had seen on the 21st floor. The name that was second, Naiu, was the Martial King's actual name. Right now, he was focusing on his brother, who was 4th place, but if he went higher than that, he would meet Monster. And of course, he wasn't planning on losing. He couldn't imagine a younger version of the Martial King climbing the 21st floor. Are you confident? Do I have to be confident? What, you scaredy? Of course I'll win. Huh, look at you. One of his eyebrows twitched at the confident answer to his joking question. Don't you know that you'll disappear just like that being arrogant? I'm sure you know, I'm not good at jokes. I was speaking from a strategic point after examining all my skills. You'll only wake up when you get beat up by my shadow, huh? Speaking of, I was planning on asking. I'm planning on beating up your shadow, is that alright? Even though it's a trial, it's still an alter ego of my teacher, so it feels disrespectful. What, or should I just attack one-sidedly? I think it's possible. The Martial King and Yi and Wu momentarily had a tense battle of wits. Fant clenched his fists after learning that there was a legal way to beat his father up, and Adora rubbed her temples like the whole situation was ridiculous. Neither of you are children, so please stop. And father, didn't you say there was something you have to do? I can do that la. The head elder was looking for you earlier, what should I do? Alright, I'll go. Do you know how bad his nagging is these days? Don't you go nagging either. The Martial King sighed at the thought of the angry head elder chasing after him, and turned his body back towards the village. Before he left, he didn't forget about saying a word to Yi and Wu. Win, while you're at it. Even the 1st place. Yes, sir. Good, you should be this confident if you're gonna be my disciple. He. But daughter, where did I say I was going earlier? The Martial King winked at Yi and Wu and continued bothering his daughter while he left. Watching him leave, Yi and Wu repeated the Martial King's words to himself inside his head. To win even the 1st place while he was at it. That meant that the Martial King from back then hadn't been able to defeat the 1st place either. Bivasbat, he was more well known by another name. Alpharon, the wall of the 77th floor. Since it was a shadow that he had left there, Yi and Wu really wanted to battle him. Even if he lost, he would know how much farther he had to go. Yi and Wu clenched his fist subconsciously. Meanwhile, Adora returned with a big sigh. She was pressing her temples at the immaturity of the Martial King again. She glared at Fant, who seemed to be excited at the thought of the 21st floor, and turned to look at Yi and Wu, sighing again. I hope you don't come to resemble the two, Oriboni. It seems like you're becoming similar to them these days. She spoke like she was sick of it. But Yi and Wu lightly laughed in response. You couldn't see it because his eyes were covered by the mask, but his eyes were smiling as well. Adora sighed again. She felt like she was getting older by the day. Anyway, I heard that you're gonna climb the tower again tonight. Yi and Wu sneakily changed the topic. Adora glared at Yi and Wu for doing that, but she nodded her head. She thought they would catch up on things, but the first thing he spoke about was the tower. It was so Yi and Wu-like. After taking the griffin to the territory of the abyss turtle first. I think it'll go smoothly since he was already acknowledged by the system. And we have to start moving as well. We've stayed here for too long. Then I'll meet you on the 23rd floor. The 23rd floor? Because I think I'll stay there for some time. Adora understood what he was saying. To play together like in the beginners section. A smile escaped her lips before she knew it. Okay, then I'll see you there. Yi and Wu saw Adora and Fant back to the tower, and he moved towards the outer sections of the tower. The two asked why he didn't go with them, but Yi and Wu shook his head and cut him off. I have something to prepare. The 21st floor was where numerous alter egos of several monsters were. And it was where people he had to beat, like Alpharon, was. Yi and Wu would have to fight full power, and he was planning on re-equipping himself as well. And I have to apologize too. The place Yi and Wu went was Heneva's smithy. The only person who could deal with the abyss turtle's shell pieces and shedding was Heneva. And he had to retrieve Han Ryong and Shannon's weapons that he asked for half a year ago. But how should I apologize? Yi and Wu thought Heneva might throw his hammer at him the moment he saw him. A lot of time had passed since their promised date, and Adora had said he even went to the One-Horned tribe. He had probably been extremely worried. The reason why Heneva did that was understandable, though. Since he had gone off the grid without much notice. For someone who knew the pain of losing someone, he had done something horrible. So Yi and Wu worried about how to apologize to Heneva. Joking probably wouldn't work this time. But because he couldn't think of any good ideas, he was frustrated at being bad at relationships with people. And when he arrived in front of the smithy, selling my stock, items are a sword breaker and 9 swords. I'll show you them all, so name the price, you fools. Ack. Heneva's doing crazy things again. 50,000 points. Are you crazy? You're calling that price at something Heneva made? 100,000 points. Give it to me. 120,000. Heneva was shaking the swords around on a podium with his stubby arms. Like it was an auction, people were crowded around. But the sword was familiar to Yi and Wu for some reason. Shannon realized what it was and shouted. Hey, go stop him. That's my sword. Yi and Wu bitterly smiled when he realized what Heneva was trying to do. He's planning on selling it away. Looking at it would only make him angry, so he probably wanted to get rid of it. And he had gotten angrier hearing that Yi and Wu returned and decided to sell it. His fiery personality doesn't go anywhere. He smiled to himself and heard Shannon's frustrated voice. Master, stop smiling and go. Dwarf, that guy's gonna sell it to weird people. Ah, it's about to be sold. Run. Shannon had been the most excited when Heneva was making his sword. Heneva was one of the top 5 artisans in the tower. Because his name was related to Arthea, he was in that position, but there were still people who wanted to try to use his weapons. And the same went for Hanryong. The weapons he had before all had the names of gods, but whatever Heneva made wouldn't be any less than those. So he wanted to use the 9 swords that Heneva made, but seeing him trying to sell them off like that made him scream. Eventually Yi and Wu used his shunpo to arrive in front of the smithy at their urgency. The auction was heating up. 25,000, 26,500. These crazy bastards. 30,000. Since a weapon made by a master was right in front of them, the players were trying to get it at any price, even if they had to use their life savings. For people in the outer sections, getting such an item was impossible. But as the price was increasing, 50,000, the atmosphere quickly cooled down. Everyone looked at the voice. 50,000 points was enough to keep a small clan running. They wondered what kind of crazy bastard was trying to disturb them. And they were all surprised seeing Yi and Wu's mask. Hoarder, why is that person here? Did you forget? The hoarder is close to Heneva. Shit, what can we do when a snake appears where only caterpillars are? The players started to move away at the astronomical amount. Thanks to that, Heneva's face was filled with annoyance. He glared at Yi and Wu smiled at him. While Heneva was grinding his teeth, a player shot his hand up in the air. 60,000, gasp. Do you have the money? How is he going to? The person who had called that price was confident that no one could ask for a higher amount. However, 1 million, gasp, everyone paled at the amount that Yian-Wu had nonchalantly called out. Yian-Wu crossed his name and arrogantly looked around him. You don't have any more, right? Then I'll take it as sold. Quote. Heneva ground his teeth again, and took out another sword. It was a sword that Hanryong had asked for. Then this. 1 million. Fucking. Yian-Wu called out 1 million points before Heneva finished speaking. The players turned even more pale. After that, Yian-Wu continued to call out the ridiculous amount again and again. The players asked if that was possible. But Yian-Wu just pulled out some jewels from Intrenina. Since it was a subspace storage that Red Dragon cherished, it was filled with precious things. Of course, it didn't mean that that much money was easily produced. It was 2/3 of the total wealth in Intrenian. But Yian-Wu knew that Heneva would return what he received with 10 times more. No, it was okay even if he didn't return it. The thankful Yian-Wu felt towards Heneva wasn't something that could be priced. He was someone that was a friend and a father to his little brother. So he could easily give all of Intrenian to him without any hesitation if he asked for it. So Yian-Wu called out prices without trying to save any of it, and Heneva ground his teeth because things weren't going his way. You fucking bastard. Thank you for the compliment. Take it away, you fucking bastard. Heneva threw all the swords he was holding at Yian-Wu. He wanted to have Yian-Wu pick up all the swords on the ground, but Yian-Wu crushed his hopes this time as well. Yian-Wu extended his hand to wrap magic power around the swords. Then, the sword breaker and the swords slowly moved into Yian-Wu's arms. After he realized his consciousness, he was able to easily lift light items. Eek! Heneva kicked the ground when things didn't go his way and whipped around to go back into the smithy again. The crowd looked at Yian-Wu regretfully. Not caring about them, he pulled out the sword breaker from its sheath. Cashing, he felt a nice touch on his hand. It was shining like the moon and sharp like the tooth of a beast. Wow, how can someone make that? People exclaimed in astonishment seeing it. They couldn't close their mouths. Even from what Yian-Wu, someone who had only just started the sword, saw, it was an amazing item. When he looked at it with his draconic eyes, there were almost no flaws. No way. Even if he's a dwarf, is that possible? You can make that in a day. It looks easily over S rank. Shannon screamed in shock. He looked like someone who had seen a miracle. Heneva's smooth and twisted sword. Category: both-handed long sword. Rank: SS. Summary: a sword that Heneva spent nights making. Its smooth blade can easily push back opponents, and the weight of the sharp edge was created to rip through defensive armor. Smoothly flowing wind. With the blessing of the wind, the right blade speeds up with speed. Its attacking power increases with its speed. The opponent's attacking power will decrease. Twisted wind. With the curse of the wind, it shifts heavy wind. It can create 12 tornadoes consecutively, and the chances of the opponent's armor being ruined increases. Ah, you crazy fool, what were you doing leaving this here? Chapter 171, Set 5. Han Ryong sighed like he agreed. It's at least a masterpiece. Under normal circumstances it wouldn't have been completed even in half a year. Had Heneva pulled all-nighters making this? Those crazy bastards, though. They offered what? 60,000. Are they blind, or are they trying to rip him off? That's what they're living in the outer sections of the tower. Shannon looked like he was ready to leave any moment. Because he quickly blocked him so he couldn't move, but a murderous intent flowed from his shadow. The players all turned pale. Some even wet themselves and plopped themselves. Some even quickly ran away so Yian-Wu couldn't see them. Yian-Wu stood there for a while like that. Then Han Ryong spoke in a trembling voice. Sir, what? Is it possible for you to check mine? He wanted to quickly see his swords as well. Yian-Wu bitterly smiled and put the sword breaker and the other swords into Intrenian. 2 shadows stretched out and entered the subspace. They would probably be busy for a while. Yian-Wu shook his head and opened the door to the smithy. Clang, clang, clang. Heneva was hammering some metal down in front of the fire. Fuck, why are you here? I brought items for 10 million. I think you're being too rude to your customer. This bastard again. Heneva really felt like he would throw the hammer in his hand away. Yian-Wu grimaced and smiled. He had subconsciously teased him. It was like a passive skill now. He dipped his head. Sorry. Heneva's hand stopped midair while trying to throw the hammer. His forehead was wrinkled. What? Sorry for not delivering news about me. I could have let you know that I was gonna be late, but it was my mistake. Quote. It was hard for Heneva to throw the hammer since this was how Yian-woo was coming out. He put down the hammer and put his pipe in his mouth. While he inhaled the smoke, it was silent. It was Heneva who broke the silence. No longer want to lose anyone. Quote. I don't want to be bothered by those things, and have to go through that again. Yian-woo shut his mouth. Just keep that in mind. He returned to his hammer. Yian-woo silently looked at him and went to stand next to him in front of the fire. He picked up a hammer as well. Some time later, the sound of the two clanging metal together could be heard from the smithy. Yian-woo pulled out his Karshina's dagger. It was a short sword that he had used well since his newbie days in the tutorial. If it didn't have the option of user's will, he would have thrown it away already. It was only AD+, and the blade was extremely dull from the use. But he was used to it, so he tried to fix it and use it. However, it was now hard to do anything more with it now, perhaps because his training on the 20th floor had been too intense. Normally, Yian-woo would have thrown it away without any hesitation. He had plenty of other swords inside Intranian, and he could probably make a better sword than this. But he wasn't able to throw away Karshina's dagger. Probably because he still had lingering feelings for it. He had gotten fond of it. This was probably because it was a sword he had used from the tutorial. So Yian-woo was determined to try to fix the dagger even if it would take some work. He even had good materials now, especially the tail snake's shedding. It was tough and sturdy, and it had the property of poison immunity. He thought it would go nicely with Karshina's dagger for some reason. Draconic eyes. He opened his new eyes and observed the flaws along the dagger. Then, he separated the blade from the handle and adjusted the blade on the table with the tool. When it was tightly in place, he brought down the hammer powerfully. After repeating the hammering several times, the blade was divided into 5 pieces. He put them each into the fire and watched them redden with heat. He silently watched the process and then pulled out the shedding from his bag, shaking it lightly so it would become more neat and tough. Yian-woo continued pulling out things from Intranian. There were minerals he had received as hidden pieces, and of them, there were the few orichalcons he managed to get. Orichalcon was extremely tough, so it was traded expensively. He halved it and put it into the fire. Then he waited for it to melt. Orichalcon didn't melt easily, so he didn't forget to input his holy fire into the fire as well. With this, Heneva, who was trying to ignore Yian-woo, couldn't focus on what he was doing and observed Yian-woo. He was just upset at Yian-woo, not too mad. And when Yian-woo had apologized, he was feeling better now. He couldn't find the opportunity to speak to Yian-woo because of his pride. But when Yian-woo started getting those materials out, his gaze immediately focused on them. He was curious about how Yian-woo had gotten them, as he was also worried as well. Yian-woo slightly smiled seeing Heneva peek at him. He could just ask if he was curious. He really was a prideful person. And that was probably why he was so easily teased. Since Yian-woo had been the one to make the mistake, he decided to lower himself. Heneva, HMPH. What? Heneva quickly whipped his head around, pretending like he wasn't watching, and snorted. But Yian-woo didn't miss how his ears twitched. Yian-woo barely pushed down the laughter coming up and spoke. I want to make a dagger. Could I ask for some help? How can someone who learned metallurgy from me not be able to make something as simple as this? It's because I lack the skills. I can fix things or make simple items, but creating something is completely new territory. Yian-woo put some emphasis on his words. But aren't you my metallurgy teacher? And you're an artisan as well. Of course I need your help. Twitch twitch. Heneva's ear continued to move up and down. His ear was slightly red. It seemed he was embarrassed. Like it was nice for him to hear the words, teacher, and, artisan, he lightly coughed. Ahem. Well, if you say so. Fine, so what are you curious about? Actually, I got some good materials this time. Materials. Yian-woo realized that Heneva was starting to move closer to him and began to prepare the bait. Would you like to see? Pull it out. Yian-woo pulled out the shell pieces and the Void Dragon's abyss, along with some minerals. Momentarily, Heneva's gaze changed. Is this? This is what I got as a reward from the Abyss Turtle and Void Dragon. And these minerals are. Heneva had heard roughly about what Yian-woo went through on the 11th floor from Adora and Fant. But his eyes were widened because he didn't expect this to happen. Minerals like orichalcons weren't actually that hard to come by. They might be expensive, but he could get if he needed to. But shell pieces and void were different. These were priceless. Because they were things that you couldn't get unless you killed legendary beasts. But Yi and Wu nonchalantly put them in front of him. Of course, Heneva would be flipped out by something like this. He could feel the artisan's passion in him burning up. His fingers were itchy. Ahem, what are you going to do with these? Heneva tried to hide his excitement and asked in the most serious voice he could muster. But he couldn't help how his voice trembled a bit. Yi and Wu lightly grinned seeing that Heneva had taken the bait. He was thankful he was wearing a mask at times like this. I want to re-equip my overall equipment. Heneva's gaze sunk. Re-equipment, you say? Yes, it's been a while, and I've changed a lot as well. I guess it is time to re-equip. It had been a long time since Yi and Wu first got his equipment when he entered the tower. Even if you took care of your equipment, it would become ruined, and as a player's fighting style changed, their equipment needed to change as well. So players usually re-equip their equipment every 5 floors on average. They got rid of equipment they didn't need and found new options that their property and abilities fit the best. Since Yi and Wu hadn't re-equipped once, he was a bit late now. Of course, Yi and Wu's equipment was much better than what players on the lower floors had. Vigrid, Aegis, and the despair of the Black King. Guy's eyes and the magic bayonet also went along well with his skills as well. The Karshina's dagger and Goblin King's eye from the tutorial were a bit old now, but Yi and Wu still used them well. Since my battle methods are pretty varied. Although I intended to make my skill tree go this way. This was what Yi and Wu had intended from the beginning. Yi and Wu had planned on awakening his dragon body anyway, so he had tried to grow his strength with that in mind. He focused on his dexterity, movement, and senses. Because he had trained in the military in Africa, he knew how to judge himself rationally. And the despair of the Black King had just landed in his lap. Also, Yi and Wu was strong because he didn't focus on his magic artifacts and tried to train himself instead. But now, he was feeling the need to switch it up. When he learned aura on the 20th floor, his body had gone through immense growth. He needed something to support it. He felt like his body needed something else. He also wanted to have it done before he challenged the 21st floor, but the desire to change himself was the greatest. That's how it happened. Yi and Wu explained what happened to him to Heneva. Heneva would probably be able to tell him the answer. Yi and Wu waited for Heneva to finish organizing his thoughts. And after a few hours passed, Heneva slowly lifted his pipe from his mouth. So you're saying since you have a lot of money, you change everything about you, is that right? Yes, and to want to be involved in some of it. I know it's greedy, but I think that what I make for myself will be best for me. Heneva burst out laughing. That's a good idea. An item has to fit with their owner. Yi and Wu didn't just bring up fixing Karshina's dagger to turn Heneva's mind around. He also had the desire to make an artifact for himself. Since this was one of the wishes of a player who learned metallurgy. Also, to learn mechanical magic, he would have to train his metallurgy as well. That's why you gave me that much money. Heneva looked at Yi and Wu like he was dumbfounded. I can't say that it's not. You damned. Heneva cursed at what Yi and Wu said, but he lightly smiled. He knew that if Yi and Wu said that, it meant he trusted him. Heneva didn't feel bad at all. Then he narrowed his eyes. Anyways, you leave changing everything to me. Yes. Are you saying that knowing what you're saying? Yes, I know. Yi and Wu heavily nodded his head. Heneva shook his head. No, you don't know how important this is. Making new equipment that fit a player. It might seem simple, but actually, it was outright outrageous. It meant that a player was revealing everything about himself. Attributes, stats, properties, skill tree, physique, level of magic power, and future growth. It meant that you were showing your weaknesses to the artisan you chose. If the artisan you chose decided to turn against you, or if the information was leaked, you were done for. Heneva was talking about that. The being receiving the most attention in the tower right now was Yi and Wu. After he reached the 50th floor, he would get more attention, but most people knew his name. But the information known about him was comparatively little. It was only known that he was skilled in martial arts and facts about his skill tree weren't known. There were a lot of places that asked for information about Yi and Wu. Heneva pointed that out and wanted Yi and Wu to think about it a bit more. From what he could tell, Yi and Wu didn't know how much attention he was receiving as a rookie. But, no, I know well. Yi and Wu spoke firmly, and from his expression, Heneva thought of someone else. A little child who had absolute trust in him. Fine, I'll help you, but the main is me. You assist me from the side. If you lays off, I'm gonna break your head into pieces with the hammer. Under his mask, Yi and Wu laughed. I leave it to you. And, from that day, the fire in Heneva's smithy wasn't extinguished. Chapter 172, Set 6. Clang, clang, clang. For several hours, Heneva had been silently hammering the metal. The guy's eyes was next to his, disassembled, and the shell pieces and shedding were just lazily tossed next to them. The first thing that Heneva had chosen to create was the abdomen section. That was because it was the center of defense armors. There were a lot of attacking styles that attacked the stomach area, so it was the place that took the most work. Heneva was planning on making a gauntlet, belt, pants, boots, and a mask, with the abdomen at the center, into a set. The additional effects that came with a set artifact was pretty outstanding as well. And he happened to have a good set. The magic series. He was thinking of putting that all into this. Magic. He bitterly smiled at the sudden thought when he was hammering. The magic series. He didn't think the day would come when he finished it with his own hands. The first item of the set, the magic bayonet, was supposed to go to someone else. But it hadn't been able to get to its original owner. However, it seemed like the new owner was using it well. So Heneva sometimes thought, was the magic bayonet not fated to go to its original owner? Did it find another destiny, and adjust to its new fate? After touching metal for a long time, he firmly believed that metal had its fate too. It was only an object when it was a material, but when Vestige entered it after use, he thought that they started to have their own minds. And from what Heneva saw, the magic bayonet hadn't been able to get to its original owner, but it was happy next to its new owner. So Heneva wanted to make friends for the magic bayonet. Friends who could walk on its thorny path with it. This isn't just adjusting it, but creating a completely new item. That rude bastard, using an oldie like this. A moment later, Heneva stretched, and complained to himself. But there was a smile on his lips. Actually, he hadn't decided exactly how to adjust, change, Guy's eyes. At first, he thought about whether to just add things onto it, but he thought that wouldn't be enough. His forehead wrinkled, then he waved his hand in the air and a hologram window popped up. Player information, body information, name, planet origin, tendency, neutral evil 61%. Height, 182 centimeters. Weight, 89 kilograms. Traits, cold-blooded, trainer. Titles, Monster Hunter, blessed by magic power, legendary beast successor, one who leads death, descendant of the Monkey King. Body abilities, strength, 812 plus 90. Dexterity, 851 plus 101. Health, 778 plus 88. Magic power, 1052 plus 152. Skill. Opening parenthesis. 51.2% extrasensory perception, 15.9% foresight, 2.0% time difference, 8.9% Batory's vampiric sword, 42.8% holy fire, 10.8% shunpo, 68.9% magic circuit, 70.1% heaven wing mana control, 48.6% 8 extreme fists, 80.2 blessing of the blue spirit, 18.0% fire rain, 5.5% open speaking, 15.6% 72 Bian, 1.2%. Properties. Fire, 102 plus 201. Water, 35 plus 30. Darkness, 88 plus 65. Evil, 30 plus 100. It was Yi and Wu's status window. Heneva had tried to guess Yi and Wu's weight and body type, but Yi and Wu just left him with all the information. He didn't know if he trusted people easily, or if it meant that that was how much he trusted him. It was probably the latter, since he was a pretty smart guy, but Heneva was flabbergasted because he didn't expect Yi and Wu to give his status window over just like that. Of course, all the important things were marked as, but it wasn't hard to guess what it might be. But with this, Heneva was able to quickly discover what path Yi and Wu's items needed to take. Since it was a lot easier with the information the system provided. But it was also harder in a way as well. It wasn't hard to get materials or supplies. Yi and Wu provided a lot, and he could buy whatever he needed with money. However, it was how he made it. His status was overall focused on magic power, and his dexterity was pretty high as well. That meant he could go with the armor he was thinking about. It might be good to decrease the weight even more. But if the weight was lowered, the defense would also decrease as well. Also, the shell pieces of the abyss turtle were pretty heavy. Even if he cast lightning magic on it, the material was so tough that it would decrease movement. And he couldn't make an armor out of cloth. Who would think that this is a player on the lower floor? He would probably be able to easily defeat most rankers. And that also meant he was going to grow before he reached the 50th floor. Heneva's name was on the line. He had to make something he wouldn't be embarrassed about. And Heneva's deliberations continued. His eyes were fixed somewhere on the name and planet origin that were marked with question marks. Crack, crack, every time he moved, he could feel his bones moving against each other. Yin Wu breathed out after feeling more relieved. Unlike Heneva, who was used to the smithy, he wasn't used to sitting still like this when he wasn't meditating, so he had to stretch sometimes. Doing so after intense concentration made him feel good. The night air felt fresh as well. Yin Wu confirmed that there wasn't anyone near him with his extrasensory perception. It was the perfect place for him to train. Thankfully, there was no one around. But he didn't know if someone might show up, so he commanded Boo through the black bracelet. Boo, defense, obeying your orders. With Boo's answer, a bluish air spread along the territory of the extrasensory perception, and a sturdy wall was built. The defense magic was magic that needed a considerable amount of knowledge. However, Boo was showing rapid growth, being able to do that kind of magic easily. He was a perfect lich. Or the rune magic fit Boo better than he thought. Yin Wu spoke up while thinking those thoughts. Nemesis, Nike. He felt something leaving the Philosopher's Stone from his heart. And in front of him appeared the giant Nemesis and a Nike that came up to his chest. I still can't get used to it. Yin Wu felt the unfamiliar names on his tongue. Krung and Chirpy were nice and affectionate. But seeing the two with confident faces after receiving the new names, he couldn't bring himself to bring that up. It would be best if you don't have any thoughts about changing our names. Or our contract will really be broken. But why did you call us, Master? The strong Nemesis, and Nike, who had his head cutely titled. Even though they were both legendary beasts, their personalities were the complete opposite. You guys seem to have changed a lot. So I wanted to check. Check our skills. Good mindset. He. Master, you'll be really surprised when you see how much I've gotten stronger. Nike covered his beak with his mouth and giggled. His eyes were curved backwards like he was amused by something. Then should we start with Nike? No, start with Nemesis. The main character is supposed to be last. Where did he hear something like that? Yin Wu laughed. Nemesis stepped up without saying much. It was like he was Nike's older brother. Mature, and taking care of him behind his back. Did the Philosopher's Stone help? Nemesis nodded his big head. Of course. It was enough to change my level. Yin Wu's gaze changed. It was that much? Yeah, if it wasn't for that, I don't know how long it would have taken to fix my strength. It might have taken tens of years, and I would have forgotten things. He thought that Nemesis had been sleeping in the Philosopher's Stone, but he realized that he was healing himself. He had spent time in the egg, but that wasn't enough. But there was nothing he could do about that. Since he had the powers from when he was a mythical beast, the new properties he learned when he was in the dimension, and the powers of the legendary beasts from Yin Wu. The Philosopher's Stone wasn't just somewhere for him to rest. But he still didn't know exactly what the Philosopher's Stone did. In the duration while Nemesis was in the stone, his growth didn't pause at all. Where did you get this mysterious stone? And Nemesis became curious. There wasn't a magic organ that could be as powerful as the dragon heart. But Yin Wu didn't properly answer him. If Nemesis heard how the stone was made, he would be disgusted. And the same went for Nike. So Yin Wu decided to block off information about the stone for some while. It was a relief they could only read some information about it. Let's check it first. Alright, Nemesis lifted his head to look at the sky. Do you know about the skills I had? Chapter 173, Set 7. Somewhat. The skills that Nemesis had when he was Mern could be separated into two categories. Empty Dream, and Dragon's Pillar. A legendary beast could resist magic attacks from the outside, and Mern was similar in that way. Empty Dream had the power to lessen the magic power within the area, and Dragon's Pillar could create a storm to blow away things in its path. Because of that, people used to say that in a place where Heaven Wing was, it was impossible to attack with magic. He even had the title, Magic Massacre. Nemesis seemed to be proud of his past. Right, and what I have now isn't too different. The only difference is weight, it'll be easier if you see it with your eyes. Nemesis suddenly closed his eyes. Dream fades away. When he said the activating phrase, Nemesis had black spots all over him like he was covered in soot. Nemesis began to fade away, and darkness spread around him. Like they were on the 20th floor, everything disappeared. The entire world turned black and it was silent. Emptiness came, like someone had roamed around in nothingness and was emanating that power. Anyone would be confused if they were caught in this. For some reason, Yian-Wu thought he saw Nemesis pleased with himself far away. He shook his head, and asked. It's all good, but isn't the activating phrase something that a middle schooler would come up with? He could tell why the dragon had liked the name Nemesis. A middle schooler, what are you talking about? Look at the skill, it needs an appropriate phrase that can describe it well and… Nemesis burst out shouting at what Yian-Wu said, and began to explain. Does he also have the habit of explaining everything one by one? He glossed over what Nemesis said in annoyance, and confirmed the skill information in front of him. Dreaming illusion, rank, AA+. Proficiency, 0.0%. Summary, dreams are a world mixed with reality and illusion. Enemies are trapped in this world. They'll roam around not knowing if it's a normal dream or a nightmare. Bewitching fantasy, within an area, enemies will be trapped in a created nothingness. They'll be in a state of confusion and fear. If the two emotions are felt excessively, they will be locked in a state of panic and not be able to tell where they are. Contrary to their enemies, allied forces will be buffed. Fearsome nightmare. At most, with a 20% probability, magic-type skills will be limited, and a penalty will come from using them. However, it doesn't apply to the authority level. A great amount of magic power will be used as it is creating a world of nothingness. It depends on the proficiency of the skill. While the skill is used, Nemesis will be defenseless. If his body is attacked, the skill will be cancelled. Yian-Wu's eyes widened after confirming the skill. Empty Dream had been the nightmare of countless magicians. But it seemed like there was a much better skill now. It was the same in that it affected magic-type skills. And the additional bewitching fantasy option that was added would be a lot of help. It will go well with the territory settings. If it was used with the dragon's authority, the enemies trapped in it wouldn't be able to budge an inch. It was like someone had given Yian-Wu wings so he could fly. And it said that it creates a dreamlike world. Then does that mean I can make illusions if I get a more superior skill than this? Yian-Wu thought he might be able to use the concept of dreams in the near future. Of course, he could do a lot with just reaching the 6th step of the A-Dragon's authorities, but he would be able to do so much more with it. He stroked his chin. It was something that would happen in the future, but he needed to plan things now. Yian-Wu checked the next skill right after. Violent Whirlwind. Rank, A. Proficiency, 0.0%. Summary, it can become wind by creating storm effects. The movement of the enemy decreases by 10%. Also, it can speed you up. Every time the proficiency increases by 5%, the amount of whirlwinds increases, making at most 15 at a time. It was a skill Yian-Wu was glad to see. With this, I'll be able to focus on leading Bu and the undead army. Because Yian-Wu still fought his enemies when he spread his territory, it was Bu who led the army. So Bu was tired summoning the spirits, using fog of blood, and leading them all. It was inefficient as well. However, since Nemesis would take care of his territory, Bu wouldn't have to do that anymore. He could just focus on the undead army. And Nemesis suddenly appeared from the darkness. He came to him with his chest thrust out. Do you see the power of this body now, Master? Yeah, I see why it has the activating phrase of a middle schooler. How many times do I have to say? Yian-Wu ignored Nemesis again and looked back at Nike. Nike, can you show yours too? Yeah, you'll be totally surprised when you see it. Nike powerfully thrust his wings apart and shouted with confidence. There were 5 skills that Yian-Wu could check. There were 2 skills that popped out the most. One of them was Holy Fire. It was similar to what Yian-Wu had, since he had gotten it from the Phoenix as well. However, if there was something that was different, it was that it had other effects. Fire Hail, and Sea of Fire. Like their names, one was pouring hail from the skew, and the other was raising fire from the ground to burn everything in its path. However, it ate up as much magic power as Violent Whirlpool, so he would have to be careful using it. Since he couldn't burn up his allies. They were good skills, but what stood out to him was this. Fire Spirit. Rank, D, S+. Proficiency, 0.0%. Summary. A phoenix dies and comes alive by fire, which is why all fire in the world is the territory of the phoenix. Thanks to this, it is possible to reincarnate and resurrect in fire. Resurrection of fire. When HP goes under 20%, it is possible to heal oneself in fire once a day. Other skill effects are paused when attempting resurrecting. Reincarnation of fire. You can move however you want after being melted in fire. However, fire created to attack by enemies cannot be controlled, and only slightly influenced. It might not look too different from holy fire on the outside. However, if you looked closely, they were completely different. It was pretty much a skill made for Yi and Wu. Being able to melt whenever you wanted to fire. And controlling it to how you wanted. What would happen if Nike melted Yi and Wu's holy fire? The fire power would increase. A lot. Yi and Wu didn't feel uncomfortable using fire. It was familiar to him like it was a part of his lambs. His wings of fire naturally came out when Heaven Wing Mana control was activated, and holy fire wrapped around his blade when he pulled aura out. But if Nike was added on top of this, Yi and Wu's limits would be surpassed. They would all become more powerful. He didn't worry about not being able to work with Nike. They were able to read each other's mind just by looking into the other's eyes. Nike. Yeah. Nike realized what Yi and Wu wanted and nodded his head, flying up. And thousands of flames headed down to Yi and Wu. At the same time, Yi and Wu spun his magic circuit. He didn't feel most heat now, but as he felt this feat, he was surprised. It spread throughout his body. The fire turned blue from red, and into yellow from blue. It burned everything about him. No, it didn't just burn it, but broke it all apart. The small amount of moisture quickly dried up, and the atmosphere was boiling. The expanding air pushed against the defense system, and violently shook it, like it would collapse any second. He had just released his power, but it was this strong. The 3 pairs of fire wings increased to 4 pairs. He wondered if it was too much, but there was nothing else he could do to control his fire power. Yi and Wu didn't stop there. First, he lowered his fire power so it wouldn't get in the way, and soared high into the sky, spreading his wings of fire apart. He had used them before, but there was a limit in the speed and turning direction. But now, it seemed like those limits had disappeared. He moved with the flow in the air, and when he was somewhat used to it, he added more speed. The sound of the sound barrier breaking rang in Yi and Wu's ears. If Shunpo, Haste, and Blink are added to here, Yi and Wu activated all his skills at the same time. A target appeared before him. Then, with just a slight shake of his dagger, there was a large explosion, and a whole forest that was nearby was blown away. Now I know why the rank is like this. Yi and Wu quickly left after seeing the destroyed forest. The forest was still exploding. After the initial explosion, sparks flew to create the second and third explosion. The forest had already lost its shape, and only the smell of something burning was left behind. He was planning on taking back the fire before there was more damage, but he couldn't fix what happened. People would gather around because of the large round. Yi and Wu realized why fire spirit wasn't fixed to just one rank. Various kinds of attacks were possible. If there was a problem, it was that this was the greatest power that Yi and Wu would summon. What if aura was added here? Or if fire rain was combined? Or if his dragon's body was awakened as well? If it was awakened, what do you think? It's crazy. If I felt that before I died, I would have been in danger. Shannon and Hanryong spoke about how they felt. Both of them looked satisfied. Yi and Wu asked Hanryong, what if we met when you were at your strongest? I would have still been in danger. If aura, and Nike, and even fire rain was combined, I probably would have lost an arm or a leg at the very least. Since it was something that even the Saber God acknowledged, he felt satisfied. But I won't be scared. How come? I would be careful not to get swept away by the storm. Or not give you time for that. Of course. Yi and Wu nodded like he agreed. Since Hanryong wasn't someone to let his opponents attack. And it's dangerous because it doesn't distinguish between friends and foes. I think it's better off not having it if you can't control it. Yi and Wu nodded his head again. It was definitely dangerous. Not just for him, but if the undead army was exploded as well, he would be destroying himself. Then what if I focus on it being condensed and not exploded? Yi and Wu changed the direction of his attention. If he could just focus it on his aura and his blade. Of course, he would have to have weapons that could bear it, but he thought Vigrid would be able to do it. Then he would be more threatening. No, it didn't just end there. How many people would be able to take his fiery aura and blade? There's still a lot left that I want to practice. He was planning on keeping this skill unused until he could control it perfectly. Then is the only thing left to check the spirit now. Yi and Wu didn't forget about the message when he cleared the Abyss Turtle's quest. The message that said he could learn spirit magic. He checked the skill that wasn't marked as temporary anymore. Blessing of the Blue Spirit. Chapter 174, Set 8. Blessing of the Blue Spirit. Rank. Proficiency. 18.2%. Summary. To show his gratitude, the Abyss Turtle has presented one of his subordinates. Because the Blue Spirit was born in a deep thought, it wasn't able to have a direct identity, but it can support multiple roles. It gives its sense of identity so multiple skills and properties can be learned. The growth of the spirit depends on its owner. This is a superior skill. Only those acknowledged by the Abyss Turtle can use it, and it can grow according to the proficiency. It doesn't have an identity yet. An identity must be created before it can grow, so set an identity first. The deeper your understanding about spirit magic is, the faster the growth will be. Yi and Wu had been using the effects of the spirit, but he couldn't summon it. With the quest over, he thought he would be able to use it, but the spirit seemed to be different than what Yi and Wu knew. Spirits grow in the waste of nature, so most of them are hard to handle. However, they are arranged from the highest level, king, so it's fun to grow them. There were famous spirits like Fire Spirit, Kasa, and Wind Spirit Sylph. They were weak by themselves, but they had identities, and could grow more. Kasa was a salamander, and salamanders could become salist. But the Blue Spirit seemed to be a bit different. It didn't have an identity or property. Since it was blank, it was up to Yi and Wu how it would be grown. It might have more potential than other spirits, but that meant that it was more likely it would be messed up. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. Yi and Wu bitterly smiled looking at the blue form that was floating above his hand. He didn't have a clue how to grow it. Since it had the ability to prevent the powers of the legendary beasts from clashing, it wasn't weak. It would be nice if I can grow it well. But I don't have the freedom to spend time on it like rune magic. He was already busy with the 72 Bian, heaven things, and the yin sword. He was planning on studying magic and spirit magic sometime, but it was lower on the list of things he had to do. Then is that the only option? Yi and Wu suddenly thought of something. Giving a personality. What if he led the spirit to grow by itself? The personality he gave it would have to be outstanding. Thankfully, Yi and Wu had a lot of personalities to put in the Blue Spirit. There were over 1,000 souls in his collection, and he had some high-ranked souls among them as well. Like Hepburn and Sol Luna. But Yi and Wu shook his head. Hepburn was Erd's apostle. The soul of a superior species was a waste, but her loyalty to Erd was too strong. She would only be a bother. Same with Sol Luna. She was a good candidate since she was skilled with the sword and was a vampire. But she's too sly. It wasn't someone he wanted to have near him. Then there was only one person left. Rebecca is the best. The only bad thing was that she was prideful and wouldn't like to serve anyone. It was also a problem that he didn't have her soul. That's not a problem, since there's a way around it. But the fact that I might become enemies with Cernunnos puts me off. He could try to put Rebecca in the spirit, but it would result in receiving enmity from Cernunnos. Yi and Wu considered whether it was worth it to be at odds with a god. I'm already enemies with Erd, and I have a strange relationship with the goddesses Nemesis and Nike. If I'm going to tie it up with the gods anyway, let's just try it once. Yi and Wu organized his thoughts and summoned Bu. Bu bowed his head as soon as he saw Yi and Wu. He already knew what Yi and Wu was trying to do. It was dangerous, but he didn't try to convince Yi and Wu otherwise. Let's begin. Yes, sir. Yi and Wu opened Intranian and pulled out Rebecca's body. Raised the black bead and murmured incomprehensible words. Then, a mysterious black light shined from Rebecca's body. Cernunnos is furious realizing what you are trying to do. The demons are looking at you gladly. One of the demons announces something about you. The support of the demons has increased. They were cheering for you. Evil property has increased by 15. Evil property has increased by 20. Your neutral personality has exceeded 70% into evil, and is changed into evil. Based on your personality, you may receive benefits and penalties. Be aware. Rebecca's body quickly regained its form. The skin and bones returned to how they used to be, and veins and muscles were connected again. Her pale face turned rosy again, and she looked like someone who was sleeping. Yi and Wu felt the air around him become heavier. There was murderous intent in it. It was probably from Cernunos. But they wouldn't be able to descend the 98th floor anyway. Since he had some enmity with them anyway, he was planning on going all the way. He could do things to make Cernunos feel better later. Yi and Wu changed the souls in his collection into black energy and gave it to Rebecca. As black energy was inputted, Rebecca's body shook. Like she would wake up any moment. Wake up, and with Boo's command, the corpse started to move. No, something else moved. It was an illusion of Rebecca, from the black energy. Where is this? Rebecca sat blankly, and looked around with more focused eyes. This is the outer section of the tower. Kane, why? No, what do you mean? Rebecca looked confused. Her time had paused at the Monkey King's palace. When she woke up, she was in a completely different area. And the constraints of the 20th floor was gone. It would be weird if she wasn't confused. And the aftereffects of dying messed her mind up. Where is Khan and Victoria? The Monkey King, and Rebecca's illusion suddenly cut off. Then, she glared at Yi and Wu coldly. You did something to me. Her mind became clearer as her memories returned to her. She had definitely died, and she had probably returned to Cernunos. But why was she here? She thought of several hypotheses. Then, she thought of something from the energy of death around her. Her face paled again. Yi and Wu silently nodded his head. It's what you think it is. You're crazy. How could you think of waking my Beck? A person's soul could be split into two. Hun and Beck. Hun was the actual soul that went to the beyond and reincarnated. On the other hand, Beck was different. It was the vestige of the dead body. The vestige of the Monkey King in the palace was included in this. Usually, Beck would scatter away when a body began to rot, but Yi and Wu had tied the Beck into Rebecca and woke it up. Soul Summon. Rank. BBB+. Proficiency. 21.5%. Summary. The corpses and souls can be summoned from beyond. Sometimes, it can create undead. Boo's superior skill, Soul Summon. You have learned how to extract the Beck vestige from a dead body. Congratulations. You have learned a new way to control death. With this, your range of power increases. You have achieved an accomplishment that is not easily achieved. Additional karma is being rewarded. You have earned 5,000 karma. You have earned an additional 3,000 karma. Bind the Beck vestige you summon to you. You can have additional rewards. Yi and Wu's eyes shined at the messages popping up in front of him. Greedy was within them. A apostle is definitely different. Beck usually wouldn't be able to regain their consciousness, but Rebecca has a clear mind. It was probably because her level was different from other living things. Just what are you planning on doing with me? I want to borrow your strength. Are you serious right now? Rebecca glared at Yi and Wu with narrowed eyes. To someone who was returning back to a god, waking them up as a vestige was very rude. Her soul had returned to the god, but it wouldn't like to live without anything inside of it. However, is something wrong? Yi and Wu reacted like there wasn't a problem. What? I'm offering a contract. Isn't this better than dying? And you might have some regret too. I'll help you with them. In return, you can help me with what I need. This isn't actually living, but don't you have all your emotions and memories? I think you're no different from something else that's living. Or think of it as being reincarnated. I think that should be good. Opening square bracket ... closing square bracket. Rebecca clenched her teeth. He wasn't wrong, since only her soul was gone, and Rebecca hadn't disappeared. Also, what he said about regrets bothered her. Regrets. Anyone would have them. No, she had been able to become an apostle after training and throwing all these regrets away. But the regrets were still bound to her like chains. When she was younger, there was a monster that had eaten up all of her family. Thinking about it now, she didn't remember it that well. But Rebecca came this far thinking of meeting that beast. When everyone had ignored her because she was a girl, she learned the sword by herself, and was able to become an apostle. But she still thought that she wasn't enough. Because the power of that monster was still sealed in her head. It might have been over-exaggerated because it was such a tramus to her, but she still wanted more power. That was why she entered the dungeon. She didn't know she would become like this. And she didn't even know what it was. Rebecca shut her eyes tightly. She knew that as an apostle, she shouldn't have these thoughts. It was mocking a god, and dropping her own reputation. But she also wanted to grab the new opportunity that Yi and Wu was talking about. Rebecca wasn't able to speak for a while. If you don't want to, I'll take back your consciousness. Yi and Wu didn't plan on forcing Rebecca with him. Rebecca could be ruined if she was trapped in this body. He would have angered a god, but he still got something out of it. Since he knew how to extract vestige, he could choose people similar to her and do the same thing. Although he would be limited to bodies that hadn't been dead too long. Eventually, Rebecca frowned and barked out to Yi and Wu. "You're a son of a bitch." Yi and Wu answered with a calm gaze. "I know, but I have to get what I want." "Fine, I'll follow you." Yi and Wu's gaze changed. "Instead, I have a condition." "Go ahead. Freedom for my movements and will." "Can't you feel it already?" A shadow extended behind Yi and Wu, and Shannon and Hanryong appeared. "Hee, our master is indeed a bit of a son of a bitch." "Master, I'm okay with including Rebecca, but I believe that she should have some respect." Yi and Wu glanced at the people behind him and asked Rebecca. "Do these two look like they don't have free will?" "Teeth Wolf, Saber God. Ooh, the Red Apostle knows me. What an honor." Shannon laughed. Even though he was a semi-ranker, rankers knew his name because he was skilled with the sword. Rebecca was silent after finding out that the two were already with Yi and Wu. Since the Saber God was there, her reputation wouldn't be hurt as much. It might not be that big of a deal, but she was sensitive to it. "Fine, but that's not what I'm saying." "Then, these two are in the shadow, right? But I want to be able to roam around freely." Yi and Wu wrinkled his forehead. "Of course, I won't be able to go far because of the connection with you, but I want to walk the world with my own feet." This seemed to be her last pride. Having free will. "So make me a new body. I'm not a god. I don't expect a real body. Even a homunculus is fine." Yi and Wu nodded his head. He couldn't guarantee it, because it was an outstanding artificial body. "But I have to have that much knowledge anyway. Since I need knowledge about the Philosopher's Stone and the pocket watch." And Rebecca knew that her request wasn't easy. So she didn't set a time limit. "Understood. Instead, before then, how would you like to live as a spirit?" Spirit, Chapter 175, Set 9. Yi and Wu spread out his right hand and pulled out the blue spirit. This was bound to the abyss turtle. As you can see, it doesn't have an identity yet, so it'll be easy to enter it. Also, Yi and Wu spread out his left hand this time. White and black souls appeared at the same time. "I'll give you these. It won't be perfect, but you can get some of your holy power back." Rebecca's eyes widened. It was the souls of Hepburn and Sol Luna. A superior species that was a high elf, and a near pure-blooded Sol Luna. If the two souls were absorbed at the same time, her lost level would be regained again quickly. Shannon complained like it was a waste, but Hanryong stabbed him in the side and told him to be quiet. Actually, the two were plenty satisfied with receiving the swords from Heneva already. Opening square bracket ... "Fine, I'll do it. What do I have to do now?" Rebecca nodded her head with a firm gaze. Yi and Wu smiled and moved the blue spirit in front of her. "Just swallow it. I'll take care of the rest." Rebecca looked disbelieving, but she just swallowed the blue spirit, since there wasn't really anything he could do to her, what with her being dead already. In an instant, Rebecca's vestige scattered and became blue waves. Then, the magic circle that Boo had set up began to activate. It wasn't that hard to combine Rebecca and the blue spirit, since Rebecca's information could just be entered into the blue spirit. That was how easy it was. Then, covering the blue spirit with vestige has been successful. The identity is being formed, and created into a lower-level blue spirit. The lower-level blue spirit has pledged allegiance to you. From now on, she will be bound to the spirit and become your sword and shield. Would you like to choose a name for the lower-level blue spirit? Rebecca. The lower-level blue spirit's name has been set to Rebecca. Loyalty has increased by 15. Control has increased by 5. The current body is not able to handle the vestige of Rebecca, lower-level blue spirit, and stats are being reassigned. While Rebecca was being reborn with transparent blue patterns, she was busy examining herself. Then she realized that it was trying to drop her level even further, so she held her hand out for the souls of Hepburn and Sol Luna. Like when she swallowed the blue spirit, she swallowed the souls immediately. Rebecca, lower-level blue spirit, has overtaken the soul of Hepburn, Erd's disciple. Stats are being reassigned. Rebecca has evolved from lower level to mid-level. Rebecca, mid-level blue spirit, has absorbed the soul of Sol Luna, vampire. Her level is increasing. Stats are being reassigned. The level has evolved from mid-level to high level. Rebecca's being became even clearer, And it didn't fall short to that of a death knight. You have succeeded in binding the extracted vestige. You have taken another step in controlling death. An additional reward is being given. Spirit Magic of Abyss. Rank: A-. Proficiency: 2.1%. Summary: this is the most rare spirit magic of all spirit magic. You need to learn several skills to understand it. The higher the proficiency, the higher the power of the spirit. Yi and Wu was able to read some of Rebecca's thoughts through their connection. Among them was Rebecca's regrets. The regret that had made Rebecca live again. He had to help her solve them to uphold his side of the contract. Then, Erd is furious. Cernunnos looks at you with a futile face. Erd says something to Cernunnos. Cernunnos refuses. Cernunnos looks at you with a strange gaze. He decides not to speak up about this incident. The demons are beginning to have a discussion about you because someone brought it up. Is it because of my accomplishments? The gods and demons couldn't interfere with the lower floors. They used messages through the system if they wanted to say something, and if they wanted to do something, they would do it within their holy territory or borrow the strength of their apostles. But there were still limits to using their apostles. Even if Erd hated Yi and Wu, she couldn't do anything about his past. It was impossible to do something about a player's accomplishments. And the same went for this case. Yi and Wu was building up his accomplishments with the black bracelet, and he received protection from the system. Cernunnos knew this, which was probably why he couldn't do much. However, he didn't even put a curse on him, which he could do. And the opposition that Yi and Wu was expecting wasn't that bad. Because even if it's just vestige, it's still his apostle. Apostles weren't simply a god spirit. They were their agents and their avatars. Of course, Cernunnos would have great interest in his apostle, so he seemed to want to observe the situation more. Meanwhile, Rebecca was busy examining her half-transparent body like she couldn't get used to it. Yi and Wu silently watched her and thought of the other message. The attention of some demon that had been going on for a while. Just what had they brought up? Even if he didn't want to care about it, it was still on his mind. The first thing Rebecca attempted was materialization. It was to be expected, since she wanted a physical body, but the proficiency of the spirit magic was too low. Oh well, but I hope you quickly raise the proficiency of the skill. Don't worry, just by having you summoned like this raises the proficiency. And I'll study spirit magic when I can. Yi and Wu no longer spoke formally to her since she was his subordinate now. She didn't really seem to care about it. She believed that sincerity was more important than being polite for show. And if there was another reward, it was that the growth of holy power in Rebecca's body had taken place. Cernunnos hadn't taken it back. It was only a minuscule amount compared to when she was living, but Yi and Wu was still grateful. Since that meant that he could lend his power anytime. When everything was finished, Yi and Wu began to help Heneva again. Heneva seemed surprised to see Rebecca following Yi and Wu, but he ignored her upon realizing she was a spirit. He knew that things would get annoying if he questioned what Yi and Wu did. And Rebecca was pretty helpful. Because hunters had to solo play, she knew how to fix weapons and such. She had knowledge of metallurgy, and she could bless items with her holy power. And Yi and Wu lit up holy fire while helping Heneva. It was something Heneva had allowed. This was because it was a process that could blend Yi and Wu's will into the items. A full moon cycle passed by like that. The artifact, Heneva's magic armor helmet, has been completed. The artifact, Heneva's magic armor boots has been completed. The artifact, Heneva's magic armor handcuffs, has been completed. The magic armor set has been created. You have been a great help to Heneva in finishing his art. Your blood, sweat, tears, and emotions have combined with the armor. Understanding with the magic armor set deepens by +20. You have gained knowledge about metallurgy. A part of the sealed dragon's knowledge is being released. The proficiency of the skill, Draconic Eyes, has increased. 65.2%. Set up your own metallurgy after learning more things. Yi and Wu looked at the new magic armor with the white mask that he temporarily had on. Among them were things he had that were fixed, and things that were newly made. So he extended his hand to check them. Already. Heneva stopped Yi and Wu's hand with his pipe. Why? What do you mean why? It's because you're going too fast. Yi and Wu's eyes widened. It's still not done. Heneva bit his pipe and grinned. Wait a moment, quote. Yi and Wu looked confusedly at Heneva because he didn't understand. Then, Heneva pulled out a glass bottle that was about the size of his hand. There was a liquid that shined like a ruby inside of it. At that moment, Yi and Wu's gaze changed. His eyelids shook. Hoo, you seem to recognize what it is. Good to see you're not blind. Well, I suppose you should be able to recognize this if you bothered me like that to teach you metallurgy. Is that really, hell's tears? Yeah, I got it a long time ago. I was wondering where to use it. I didn't really have anywhere to use it, so I'll use it specially on your items. Consider the points you gave me to be spent on buying this. Quote. Hell's tears were from a species that had gone extinct long before the draconic species. It was the last inheritance of Princess Hell from the giant species. Hell was powerful enough to be called the mother of the underground. She had enmity with several demons, and even gods were wary of her. The tears she spilled were famous enough to be rumored as the fire in hell. Except for godly materials, this was the most highly ranked item. I got it out because I saw that your properties were mostly progressed with dark and fire properties. And with this, Heneva began to speak confidently, like he was saying he was something worth the respect. Yi and Wu's shock didn't fade away even while Heneva was explaining. He knew that Hell's tears were extremely good material. But that wasn't important to Yi and Wu right now. Why is that still? Hell's tears. It was something his brother had presented to Heneva. What surprised me the most when I entered the tower was that they didn't have the concept of birthdays. They had the custom of remembering when they were born. But it was just another day to them. They didn't have the tradition of celebrating when they were born. I thought it was a bit pitiful. It's a day that only comes by once in a year. I thought that the tower was really a cold place. I didn't like that, so I wanted to celebrate the members' birthdays on my own at least. I'm pretty sure Heneva's birthday is soon. What would he like? Hee. Mom said I was a better present to her than my brother, who doesn't listen. After a lot of consideration, he decided to give Heneva the Hell's tears that he got with great difficulty. Since Heneva was a smithy, he wanted to give him something he could use. Heneva scolded his brother for getting him something useless, but his brother saw the expression on Heneva's face when he turned around. Yi and Wu thought that Heneva would have used it a long time ago. But it was still there. And there weren't any traces of the glass bottle being opened. That meant that he had cherished it without using it once. Before Yi and Wu could say something, Heneva opened the bottle. The contents of the bottle became red smoke and flowed outside of the bottle. It whirled above the magic armor set and settled into it. Then, with an explosion, all the armor combined into one, except for the magic bayonet and magic iron sword. It looked like all the armor had disappeared and only one was left. Hee, you can check it. Heneva smoked his pipe, looking pleased with himself. Yi and Wu tried to not show his shaking eyes and put his hand on the one that was left. Congratulations. You have succeeded in finishing a masterpiece with Heneva. This art will be blessed by many gods and envied by many demons. You have achieved an accomplishment not easily achieved. Additional karma is being rewarded. You have earned 10,000 karma. You have earned an additional 15,000 karma. As an additional reward, your understanding of metallurgy has become deeper, and you gained Considering Eyes. Considering Eyes and Draconic Eyes have combined to increase the proficiency of Draconic Eyes. 69.8%. Yi and Wu checked the armor. Heneva's magic armor. Category. Rank. S. Masterpiece. Summary. The masterpiece was originally made to support the user with the specialized information given about them, but with Hell's Tears, it has even more potential. Once it's worn, it can change as the user wishes. It has an automatic fixing feature, so it can repair itself after damage. It is also light, contributing to fast movement. Hell Tears. It has the purification of Hell, the mother of the underground. It influences dark, evil, and fire properties. The change in the properties depends on the user's proficiency. Draconic Eyes supporting. It widens the eyes of the great draconic species. Extrasensory perception supporting the range. This artifact is unique. There is only one in the entire tower, and it is bound to its owner. It cannot be shared with anyone else. With the influence of the masterpiece, additional skills that are added will add new options. It clears your head when worn. Many gods and demons admire and envy this. Quote. Yi and Wu tightened his hand on the armor. The supporting feature was obvious since it was specially ordered, but Yi and Wu had never seen all skills being influenced like this. And the fact that it was specialized towards fire and dark properties proved that it was specially made for Yi and Wu. For this to be possible, the maker must have thoroughly researched the player who ordered it. It wasn't something you could do in a day. Even though Yi and Wu had given his information, a lot of time had to be invested in this. Try wearing it. Yi and Wu put the armor, which was a breastplate, on his body. Then, he felt something stretch about his body like rubber. He felt like something connected between the armor and his body. He thought of what he read in the information window. All armor was a bit uncomfortable and unnatural to move in. But when he twisted and turned, the movement was smooth and natural. As the options were activated, his body heated up as well. How do you like it? Heneva asked, satisfied. It's comfortable. Yi and Wu replied. It was like being in your father and mother's arms. The words that Yi and Wu couldn't bring himself to say remained in his mouth. Chapter 176. Shadow Dojo 1. Start of Volume 8. It's a relief that you like it. Heneva chuckled. He was usually pouting all the time, but he looked like he was in a good mood right now. There was nothing Yi and Wu could say except for the words, thank you. This is the 21st floor, gate of the Shadow Dojo. When everything was set, Yi and Wu bid farewell to the One-Horned tribe, and set to climb the tower again. Other than a few words with the martial king, he didn't say much. He looked like he was deep in thought. Shannon and Hanryong didn't say anything either. They sensed that there was something about Yi and Wu and Heneva's relationship. Only Rebecca brought it up. What's your relationship with that old man? Savior. Savior. Rebecca tilted her head, but Yi and Wu didn't respond. What else should he call the only person who missed his brother? It seemed like he's fond of you, like a parent. Rebecca didn't say anything after that. She belatedly realized that it wasn't something she should talk about. Yi and Wu lightly pat his face with his hands to wake himself up. Heneva was cheering him on with the rare material. It was time to focus on the tower now. The 21st was important to Yi and Wu. As soon as he passed the door, a message popped up. The trial of the 21st floor is beginning. Trial. A shadow has always been faithfully with you, silently. However, some shadows gain their own will and do what they want. They try to take the bodies of people passing by. The 5 doors where the shadows are divided into 33 different sections. Now, choose a door and battle shadows to clear at least 20 sections. The more shadows fought, the more their will to fight will decrease. Yi and Wu checked the message and headed inside. He already knew what it said, and he would need as much time as possible to go around all the sections. Then, a green portal opened in front of Yi and Wu. Yi and Wu stopped in his tracks. Green meant that someone was teleporting. It was a portal that Guardians used. Who was coming? He never saw any of the Guardians after meeting Laplace on the 16th floor, so he was curious as to who it could be. The Guardians didn't appear on the higher levels unless it was an emergency. Then, the face of a scared little child popped out. There were tears in the child's eyes. The child seemed to be hesitant to get closer to Yi and Wu. Yi and Wu's eyes shined. The high of the 12 earthly branches, Lupi. The highest rankers Guardians were known to be as powerful as high rankers. So most of them were arrogant and mysterious. But Lupi was different. Like his weak appearance, he had a lot of tears and fear. He would cry at the drop of a hat and the other Guardians were tired of him. Even among players, Lupi was treated as a nuisance. Guardians usually gave hints about the stage, but Lupi just cried. There were girls who liked Lupi, because he was cute. But people who knew Lupi well tried to avoid him as much as they could. Although he looked timid and weak, there was a reason why the tower appointed him as the highest guardian. Lupi was a hedonist. He didn't care about other things, and he only sought thrills. The tears he spilled were only a prop to set up his stage. Why was he here? It seemed like he was here for him. Are you hash? Yes. Why, you're definitely as scary as heard. What kind of rumors had spread about him? He just looked at Lupi with a calm gaze. If you look at me like that it's scary. But Yi and Wu still didn't answer. It was not a good idea to get tied up with Guardians. More so with Lupi, so he waited until Lupi could calm down and speak. Lupi squirmed, hesitating to speak, and slowly opened his mouth. Did Laplace come by? Laplace. Yi and Wu tilted his head. Why was he looking for him suddenly? Lupi read Yi and Wu's eyes and slightly flinched. I guess he didn't see, come here. Is something wrong? Laplace is currently impeached, and you, under custody. So we're investigating surroundings. Quote. Quote. A high guardian impeached. Yanwu widened his eyes because he had never heard of something like this. Was it because he was a messenger last time? When he entered the 16th floor, Laplace had told him to be careful of Erd, saying it was a message from a demon, and disappeared. Was it related to that? But guardians frequently acted as the messenger of gods and demons. And that wasn't reason enough to get him impeached. Was there something else involved? Or was he completely off? But then he was even more confused, because there was no reason for Lupi to come finding him like this. If not. That's good. Thank you. Lupi opened the green portal again. Just when he stepped inside, he carefully turned his head. Do you need assistance on the 21st floor? Not at all. Alright then. Lupi quickly bowed and disappeared through the portal. Yanwu narrowed his eyes. Laplace, a member of the 12 Zodiac, getting impeached was a big deal. He was extremely curious as to what had happened. But the business of the Guardians didn't bother players. That was the system of the tower. He folded his thoughts and entered the yard. The Hoarder. I didn't see him for a while. He's back. I heard he spent quite some time on the 20th floor. Did something happen? I heard that the sadhu that were there disappeared. As always, gazes followed where Yanwu went. What happened on the 20th floor had spread all the way up to here. He fixed his mask and looked around. I guess they're not here either. Yanwu looked around with his extrasensory perception and smiled bitterly. He couldn't see any trace of Khan and Victoria. After he left the 20th floor, he had ordered the night watch to find them. However, they said that they couldn't. He had spent a full moon in the outer sections, but they couldn't be found in that time either. Are they on the run from the Devil Army? But I don't think so. Another thing that was on his mind was that the Devil Army wasn't taking any action towards him. It might have been because they couldn't approach him easily since he was with the One-Horned tribe. If they were that cautious, they wouldn't be called crazy bastards. There was nothing clear about what happened in the Monkey King's palace. But since he knew he couldn't let his guard down, he always had his senses up. Thinking those thoughts, he arrived inside the building. The faces of those who were looking at him changed. It was because Yanwu was standing in front of the door with the least difficulty. You only had to clear one door to pass. But the people who knew that Yanwu always chose the most difficult path thought him strange. Yanwu didn't look at them and just opened the 5th door. You have selected the 5th door. The shadows of players ranked 165th to 133rd on the 21st floor's Hall of Fame will appear in order. If you can endure at least 5 minutes or defeat the shadows, you can move to the next section. Once you defeat at least 20 shadows, you can clear the trial. 5 minutes didn't seem that hard. But they were alter egos of the greatest rankers of the 21st floor. The level of players continued to change as time went on, but it wasn't easy to take down the people in the Hall of Fame. And you couldn't just run away, because the space was limited. Players desperately tried to find their weaknesses to discover them. But Yanwu knew that he wouldn't grow if he used the same methods as them, so he was planning on setting limits on himself. First I'll clear the doors. Completely. Even if Yanwu was someone who was registered on the Hall of Fame for every floor, it wasn't simple to defeat the shadows. Especially within 5 minutes. Soon, light appeared in front of Yanwu, and he was in a new location. He was surrounded by stone walls. The 21st floor took place in individual instant dungeons. If not, there would be too many players in the same place. So this meant that Yanwu could use all the strength he wanted. Soon, the fight with Kraden, 165th place, will begin. Prepare for the fight in the remaining time. 0 hours 10 minutes and 0 seconds. 0 hours 9 minutes and 59 seconds _99. Then, with the message, black fog appeared and slowly took the form of a human. The red eyes of the shadow stood out. It was a familiar face that Yanwu saw in the diary. High ranker, greed. Did he look like this when he was younger? Like his name, he was greedy, and he was a nuisance to his brother back then. He didn't join an organization. He just wandered around getting what he needed. Was his speciality using fake sword techniques? Greed slowly pulled out his sword from its sheath. But Yanwu didn't miss how he moved his left hand behind his back. There were probably small daggers behind his belt. It was similar to how Yanwu fought. Yanwu also pulled out Karshina's dagger from his belt. It was Karshina's dagger, but it had been a long time since the dagger changed. It was impossible to attack during the waiting time. Instead, He could set up magic or look for advantageous locations to fight from. Yi and Wu didn't do anything other than getting his 2 swords ready. What should I do? Then, Rebecca appeared with crossed arms. Yi and Wu could make the monster portents, the undead army, or the spirits move for him, but he didn't. Just stay there. This is something I have to take care of by myself. Yi and Wu firmly shook his head. Rebecca nodded and stepped back. Then, she crossed her arms and looked at Yi and Wu. She knew Yi and Wu had hidden powers, but she didn't exactly know what they were, so she had to check. Since he was the master she had to serve, she wanted to see what she could help with her. Then, 0 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds _ 02. 0 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds _ 01. The time for preparing is finished. The trial of the first section is beginning. As soon as the count began, Yi and Wu hit the ground. Then, a blistering heat whirled around him. Chapter 177, Shadow Dojo 2. Greed and Yi and Wu both moved forward at the same time. Boom, swords clashed together, but the sound of metal wasn't heard. Instead, there was an explosion. As I expected, everything's exactly like him. I shouldn't let my guard down. Yi and Wu's eyes shined, feeling the vibration along Karshina's dagger. And his weapons look pretty nice. The reason why he had the nickname of Greed was from none other than his obsession with treasure. He was evil enough to backstab his friends to get what he wanted. Every time Greed used a weapon, magic circles came up from the ground. It was clear how much he had invested in them. But Yi and Wu knew that his own inventory didn't fall behind. He was wearing a masterpiece artifact like those that high rankers would wear. The magic armor made Yi and Wu's movements smooth. The same went for Karshina's dagger. +3 Karshina's dagger. Category: one-handed weapon. Rank: A. Black blade. It was specially crafted to be connected to the despair of the Black King, and it increases attack power by 15 to 20%. It was adjusted to the skills of the current user. A lot of the new Karshina's dagger was changed by Yi and Wu. What he did the most to it was placing jewels on it to make it stronger. The purer a jewel, the more it could amplify effects. Because it was a basic ingredient of alchemy, there was even a study dedicated to it as well. Fortunately, Heneva knew how to take care of the jewels. Yi and Wu focused on what Heneva taught him. During the day, he helped Heneva with his work, and in the night, he received lessons from Heneva. Of course, he used time difference in this process. He engraved the rune letters that Victoria had taught him, and he set them with jewel powder. The jewels that he used were the best of the best, meaning they were 90% pure. Yi and Wu had enough to bathe in it, and Heneva's connections could get him however much he needed. Yi and Wu was able to learn how to set jewels after spending a lot of money and receiving a lot of nagging from Heneva. There were 2 types of rune letters on the dagger. Make darker the dark, make hotter the hot. It was perfectly adjusted for Yi and Wu. When Yi and Wu was learning, he focused with the mindset of absorbing everything that Heneva taught him. He was able to observe Heneva with his draconic eyes and extrasensory perception. And so, this was the first artifact that Yi and Wu had patched up, but he was confident. Whatever Greed had wouldn't be as outstanding as this. As if to reflect Yi and Wu's thoughts, Greed was pushed far away, not being able to stand Karshina's dagger's power. It was only a shadow, but Yi and Wu felt like the shadow was surprised. He hit the ground again not to lose his winning edge. The fellow threw about 5 small knives at him, but Yi and Wu lightly whipped them aside and arrived in front of him. In the blink of an eye, 2 swords banged against each other multiple times. Then, the shadow's balance wobbled, and Yi and Wu input aura into his dagger. Above him, holy fire whirled around. The fire crackled and heated up the room. Greed, who was trapped inside, looked like he was in severe danger. Just why did that person enter the 5th door? The player's greatest interest today was about Yi and Wu. The hoarder had started to climb the tower again. But unlike what everyone predicted, the door he challenged wasn't the 1st door, but the 5th. Everyone thought it strange. Even though the first place on the Hall of Fame on each floor was marked as unrevealed, everyone knew who it was. So they all thought he would enter the 1st door to take 1st place again, but they were shocked he headed inside the 5th door. The same went for the Trinity members. Yi and Wu didn't know who they were, but he had met them throughout the different floors. Well, to be exact, they had met him. They twiddled their thumbs inside the cave of snakes when Yi and Wu was hoarding away all the hidden pieces to hatch his egg, and they served under him as the squadron leader temporarily in Red Dragon. They only had bad memories of him, so they didn't want to get involved with him. But horrid fate was fate, and they saw him on the 21st floor again. Even though it was horridly fateful for them, they were still surprised to see him enter the 5th door. Just what is the hoarder thinking? Did he really just twiddle his thumbs on the 20th floor like in the rumors? Because Yi and Wu had stopped clearing the floors for a while, there were rumors about him. It was that he fell into a slump after being hit with a hurdle he couldn't jump for the first time and lost all his abilities. If the rumors were true, it wasn't strange that he chose the 5th floor. You experienced that horrid guy and still believe those false rumors. Heidi looked at Dylan and Jun like they were pathetic. Dylan and Jun's gazes turned to look behind them. Heidi, who was an elf, had fairy eyes, so she could faintly see the truth. It was what got them out of trouble a few times, so they were interested in what she was saying. Do you see something? Do I have to? What are you talking about? Say it so we can understand. Can't you see the hoarder is aiming for, you fools? Quote. Question mark single quote. Dylan and Jun tilted their heads, not understanding her, and Heidi sighed frustratedly. Obviously, he's planning on clearing all the doors. It was then that their eyes changed. It was understandable that Dylan didn't understand since he was pretty dull anyway, but why was Jun being like this too? Maybe their heads were empty now because they were stuck on the 21st floor for so long. Or, they could have not chosen to think that far even though they could. Each and every one of the shadows behind the doors were monsters. The players who had all influenced the tower were in there. Especially those who were called the 9 Kings. They were the real ones, and not even high rankers wanted to come face to face with them. Actually, the Martial King had earned his fame when he won against the high ranker, Ice King, inside of there. So even though Yi and Wu was incredible, it was hard to imagine he could consecutively fight the monsters beyond the door. But Heidi lifted her head elegantly like she was definitely right. Eventually, Dylan and Jun looked at the 5th door too. Considering that Heidi's predictions were never wrong, it was completely logical. Just wait, you'll probably see in a day. It didn't even take that long for Heidi to be proved right. Boom, boom, what's that? The ground suddenly began to shake. Because of the instant dungeons, the stage of the 21st floor didn't usually get shaken up. The players quickly turned their heads to find where the sound had come from. They spread their senses, but they couldn't discover the source. The only thing that came up was the 5th door. But logically, it was hard to imagine that that was the reason for the earthquake, so they thought they just made a mistake and started looking elsewhere. However, Dylan and Jun's faces were taken aback because of what Heidi had said earlier. Then, boom, the faint earthquake became violent. Players who were looking for its origin and players who ignored it to continue their training all looked at the 5th door with shocked faces. The long door heaved up and down. Until now, whatever happened inside hadn't influenced the outside. But this ingrained fact changed just like that. It felt like a giant was running at them. The sounds of explosions became louder, and the shaking became faster. They had to cover their ears because the sound was like thunder crashing into their eardrums. Dylan and Jun shut their mouths. Heidi narrowed her eyes. Her fairy eyes were amplified. She continued to see wavelengths of magic power use flowing out from the 5th door. 6 minutes 31 seconds, 6 minutes 32 seconds. Also, she had a stopwatch going on inside her head. Because she wondered how long it would take the new monster with those wavelengths to pass through that door. And, boom, like tens of bombs had been exploded at the same time, the last exit of the 5th floor was destroyed, and black smoke poured out. Along with the numbing smell of something burning. Yi and Wu came walking out as if nothing had happened. The players all looked at Yi and Wu with their mouths dropped open. Because it seemed like he had passed through the door without a single break. And that time that it took was 0.9 minutes 51 seconds. It hadn't even taken 10 minutes. Chapter 178, Shadow Dojo 3. Then, is there nothing you know about that? Why, yeah, so please. The bow god, Jiang Wei, clicked his tongue as he looked at the bloody person at his feet. He took the wrong step again. How many times had he made a mistake now? It had already been half a year since he received a new job from the Summer Queen. During that time, Jiang Wei had investigated Bahal and his surroundings. He thought that there might be something about who was related to this. And Bahal wasn't well liked by the people around him, so there were a bunch of people Jiang Wei had to look into. Why he was doing that, he caught 3 of the 81 eyes, though they didn't matter. The Summer Queen had been furious and said to cut their heads off. But Jiang Wei still wasn't able to find any secret. A player named Saw and that Bahal has cherished stood out. Things like how a rookie was that strong, or how he contributed in finding the saber god's son. However, it's impossible for such a nobody to be related to this. And he entered the Foreign Legion after the war began. He's too clean. If he was related to this, he would have been connected before that. The Summer Queen was thinking that Red Dragon and Cheongwado were a part of this. Then, thorough preparation would have been required. Jiang Wei thought that the other 8 clans were related to this. It was logical. In that way, he couldn't find anything to point the hoarder, Kane, out. It hadn't been that long since he came over from the tutorial, and he didn't have time to become involved with someone. His accomplishments on the different floors were so clear. And the Summer Queen didn't seem to want to be involved with the One-Horned tribe. Everyone knew that Kane was sworn brothers with the siblings and that he was a disciple of the Martial King. The Summer Queen didn't even take any reports about Kane anymore. Jiang Wei also thought it was useless and pushed his doubt about Kane aside. There were a lot of people he suspected anyway, and they were all doubtful. He actually found their ties to other clans. But after he examined everything, even down to the tiniest detail, he wasn't able to find anything. Did they clearly cut off their tail and run away? Now, he thought that it was actually possible there was someone behind all this, like the Summer Queen said. All the people planted in Red Dragon and Bahal's line were completely clean now. But only the 81 eyes were satisfied with this. The Summer Queen and Jiang Wei weren't content with just this. However, Jiang Wei trusted the Summer Queen's intuition. The draconic species were a species famed for their eyes, which could see the truth. The words of a descendant of the draconic species would probably be right. Although it seems like that intuition has been smothered now as well. Just where was he supposed to start? Jiang Wei ended the life of the player pleading below him and sat down in a chair near him, deep in thought. He thought that the mastermind behind all this had somehow aimed for some item and became involved with Bahal from there. But did he think wrong? If it wasn't that it was for some item, but because of a personal grudge against Bahal, and they had gotten information about the item in that process. He thought it was unlikely, but he didn't have any better theories. And there were a lot of people who had grudges against Bahal. Among them, the most famous ones were Arthea. Team Arthea was still impactful in Jiang Wei's memory. When he was acting as Bow God, he almost lost his life while battling against them. Their members were few in number compared to the other large clans, but each person was strong enough to remain in his memory. Although they were all blinded by greed and stabbed each other in the back. He knew that in that process, the members had become enemies. Would it be related to this? He didn't have any evidence, but it thought it was worth trying. There wasn't anyone who knew Bahal better than them, and they were all in influential positions in other clans. But there was too much stuff he had to investigate. He would have to choose one person and go from there. Jiang Wei looked through the information window the Summer Queen gave to him, and he found something that stood out. Teacher. Dwarf Heneva. The Anvil of Fire Heneva, one of the 5 artisans. He was one of the top artisans, but everyone turned their backs to him because of his relation with Arthea. Jiang Wei thought it would be best to start from there. He started to look for information about their relationship. 5 hellhounds that were each about 2 meters tall came running at him. They were extremely fierce and rough. Their hellfire was enough to turn the walls of the room black. Most players would have suffered neurosis because of this, but they don't get along with me. Yian Wu ran holding his Karshina's dagger, condensed with aura, and caused an explosion with holy fire. A bit of black energy was mixed within it. Feeling like all his attention was moving along with his blade, the different abilities he had combined as one. It was a power that focused energies like aura and black energy into every single stroke. This was how he justified Bian. And the condensed power created a powerful explosion. 3 of the hellhounds neatly broke, and the other 2 were crushed or severely injured. The instant dungeon has shook up and down. You have successfully understood the 3rd Bian, Sui. Currently learned Bian, July, Hun, Sui. Yian Wu was now clearing the 2nd door out of the 5. During that time, Yian Wu didn't just focus on defeating the shadows. He put more attention on training the Bian. It would be stupid to not use all these sparring partners. Yian Wu was able to understand the 3rd Bian with all the training. Hun supported him to learn the Bian, and Sui helped him to explode condensed energy to reduce his environment to nothing. However, he didn't get the efficiency he had had in the Monkey King's palace. Was it because he wasn't as tense back then, or because he wasn't influenced by the limits of the 20th floor? But anyhow, Yi and Wu was able to understand two of them, and he was practicing them so they could be perfectly learned. The first Bian, July, wasn't completely familiar to him yet either, so he had to focus when he used it. Swish! 3 monster birds that had been coming at him from above were ripped to shreds when he lifted his sword. Yi and Wu stepped forward past the bodies of all the dead summoned creatures. Then the person that had been confidently fighting stepped back in hesitation. He was only a shadow, but he was still quite taken aback. The summoner, Hanabi, he was well known by the name, King of Demonic Creatures in the tower. He was the last descendant of the organization that served the Devil King, and he was infamous for raising dead creatures. In a way, he was similar to Boo. His personality, skills, etc. Boo, take note, it's someone that you'll have to walk the steps of. Yes, sir. Yi and Wu ran at him again as he heard Boo's voice. He activated the draconic eyes and extrasensory perception. Training wasn't the only benefit of the 21st floor. You could sneak a look at the skills of other players. The second door has been completed. Time spent, 2 hours 31 minutes and 25 seconds _66. It took quite a bit of time this time. Yi and Wu swept his hair back leaving the second door. The fifth door took 10 minutes, the fourth door, 30 minutes, and the third door about an hour. The time it took doubled from the third door, so it took a lot of time. That was only expected. He became more tired, but the shadows that appeared were always powerful. Also, he incorporated his Bian training, and sometimes dragged the time out so he could memorize how the shadows fought. Thanks to that, his body was drenched in sweat. He could taste iron in his mouth. He had fought over 100 skilled players without rest. His dragon body helped to recuperate faster physically, but his mental tiredness didn't get any benefits. Cure. He continued to activate the rune magic that was engraved on his left arm. Healing magic was good at healing, and cure helped to lessen the tiredness. He stood still for about 30 minutes. When he felt his mind became clearer, he headed towards the last door. He felt people's gazes following him, but he just ignored it. It was clear that after this floor was cleared, it would become noisy again. He didn't want to become famous, but if he couldn't avoid it anyway, it was probably better to be as loud as possible. You have chosen the first door. Players who rank from 33rd to 1st on the 21st floor's Hall of Fame will appear. You will be able to move on to the next section after defeating a shadow. You have already gained the qualification to clear this trial, so the accomplishments of the remaining battles will be counted as karma. Light flashed in front of his eyes, and the instant dungeon appeared. It was different from the other doors. The fifth door up to the second door had closed rooms, but Yi and Wu now stood in a wide field. He was surrounded by mountains, but the field was so wide that he didn't feel enclosed. It was a space where he could run away and rest. But it was also a location where people could fight without being limited by space. Players would be able to use all the skills they had. That meant that the difficulty of this door was incomparable to the others. The shadows here are on a different level than the other doors. Yi and Wu narrowed his eyes. Until the second door, you would be acknowledged if you just endured it until the time limit. You could leave halfway to rest and train some more. But the first door was different. Once you entered a section, you couldn't quit. There were only 2 ways to leave. Survive, or die. He wouldn't have time to study the shadows like before. This was a system of the tower respecting the skilled players of the first floor. A challenger couldn't enter the first floor for fun. Only those who wanted to become stronger or prove their power could enter. Yi and Wu knew this well. That was why he had taken some time to rest before he entered. The shadows he would meet now were really monsters. He was planning on using his everything. Even his dragon blood. Also, one of the shadows here was someone Yi and Wu had to study. It was the next guy he was planning on taking down after Bahal and Leonte. The fight with 33rd place Valdebik is beginning. Prepare to fight in the remaining time. 0 hours 15 minutes and 0 seconds. 0 hours 14 minutes and 59 seconds _99. ... Then, a gigantic shadow appeared from far away. A man at least 5 meters tall. His hair was cut short, and his sharp eyes were memorable. Boom, he lifted his giant bastard sword that was longer than him, at 6 meters. The ground sunk. Phew, the crazy dog was a crazy dog even back then. He's 33rd, that's gonna be a bother. Shannon and Hanryong tsked seeing the guy. They knew too well who it was. Veilbike. He was born between a human and a giant, and he had caused huge commotion in the tower when he entered along with his brother. And he was also one of the 3 founding members of Team Arthea.